In Marvel, I am Homelander. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 176: One man slays through the demon team. Tier 3 Gene Lock? Are you kidding me? This is a newbie. The demon team members stared in disbelief at the terrifying killing intent emanating from the young man before them, as if he had personally slaughtered billions of living beings. Compared to his dragon-like aura, these self-proclaimed strongmen from the demon team were like tiny worms. With this terrifying killing intent, how many people has this newbie slaughtered? Stop talking nonsense. Damn it, everyone attack together and kill this brat. The burly white man roared, taking 2 steps forward and then raising his right fist, slamming it into John's body. A full-force strike from a Tier 3 physical body type sent ripples through the air. Such a powerful punch, yet when it hit John, faltered. All the demon team members who rushed over were stunned by what they saw. John's once perfect physique was gradually becoming deformed, his left arm rapidly disappeared, replaced by an incredibly powerful right hand, his fist as thick as a casserole dish, easily grabbing the burly white man's fist. The control over the third order gene lock has penetrated deep into the cells, achieving 100% perfect control over the body. Finally, I can use a bit of the ability to reconstruct matter, John smiled. You can grab him with 1 punch, but what about 2? The burly white man growled, raising his left hand in a feint attack while his right leg swept fiercely towards John's abdomen. The man's body began to shrink drastically. At this moment, John's face, which originally showed him to be 17 or 18 years old, began to look younger. In a short time, his body shrunk to the size of a 7 or 8-year-old. While his volume decreased, his body density increased. Now, although his strength remained unchanged, his defense had increased 5 or 6 times. Facing the white man's sweeping thigh, his body began to separate from his abdomen. The upper and lower halves of his body completely separated, and then his upper body rose a distance, allowing the white man's thigh to pass through the middle of his body. The 2 separated intestines intertwined and then reassembled perfectly. As one, he grabbed the burly man's gilded bronze belt and threw him to the ground with an over-the-shoulder throw. The instant the burly white man was knocked to the ground, the other demons, who had been waiting in ambush, immediately attacked. A bolt of purple lightning capable of melting gold and iron shot forth, but before it could strike John's body, it was swallowed up by a suddenly opened golden portal. PFFT. Another golden portal opened from behind the group, the 2 portals seemingly connected. The swallowed lightning struck a demon member on the back of the head, piercing through his brain. On John's hand, a ring made from the burly man's belt was worn, while the burly man who had been lying on the ground had been plunged into his right eye and pierced through his brain by John's left hand, and was now lifeless. We've got plenty of talent, John said with a beaming smile, then his body swelled up violently, replacing the burly white man who had just died, visibly withering away. Seeing the handsome man, realizing the gravity of the situation, the group roared, "We can't give him any more chances to evolve. We have to kill him quickly, or we'll all die." The next moment, magic, internal energy, and firearms were all unleashed, attempting to blast John to death on the spot. But then, countless portals enveloped John's figure, easily swallowing the attacks and returning them, leaving the group in a sorry state. 3 seconds later, after the portals disappeared, revealing the interior, everyone gasped. The tall, muscular man's body, along with his clothes, had completely vanished, and John's figure had returned to his original 17-year-old size. In its place surged a boundless killing intent. John's eyes were bloodshot as he stared fiercely at them. 4-tier gene lock? God, I curse your whole family. What kind of monster is this? The demon team cursed angrily. How could someone be so overpowered? Don't be afraid. The 4th-tier gene lock has a mental demon, and he might not be able to overcome it. We just need to hold on for this period. The demon team member's voice trailed off, eventually falling completely silent. They saw the bloodshot in the man's eyes gradually disappear, and after taking a deep breath, a radiant smile returned to his lips. A mere 4th tier, low-level mental demon is no match for my time-tested, astonishing wisdom and unparalleled will. John laughed, then looked at the demon team members before him and said, "You should have killed me immediately, now it's too late." Having reached the mid-4th tier of the gene lock, John could freely reorganize the atomic structure within his body. He could instantly reassemble PIM particles, increasing his strength a millionfold, or create a planet-destroying bomb, a complete crushing force against these people. The demon team members present looked utterly devastated, their faces contorted as if their mothers had died. John, however, grinned, revealing his gleaming white teeth, showing no intention of letting those who had just attacked him go. The next moment, a nuclear fission light speed gun was casually created by him. John strode towards these guys. 30 seconds later, after his arm pierced the heart of the last demon team member who attacked him, ending his life, he completely absorbed the body, further enhancing his physique. "You're quite self-aware." John glanced at Zhao Hukong, then walked up to Zheng Zha, looking at the other's severed limbs and torn jaw, and shook his head with a tisk. Then John clapped his hands, using his own body mass to create 2 vials of lizardman serum, which were injected directly into Zheng Zha and Lolly's veins. Dozens of seconds later, the two, completely healed, excitedly hugged each other. "Your Majesty, thank you for your help," the clone Zheng Zha said to John, hugging Lolly. Because John appeared in time, Lolly was not raped and dismembered by the demon team as in the original story. "No need, just call me John. My true identity is His Majesty." John waved his hand and said, "Besides, I only saved you because I wanted to." John spoke calmly. He hated 2 kinds of people, those who cheated on others, and those who tried to stop him from cheating on others. "But what about now that I'm a clone?" John looked at the sphere of light of the main god, and suddenly a feeling of unprecedented ease washed over him. He then collapsed to the ground. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" Zheng Zha asked anxiously, looking at the fallen John. "I'm fine. It's just that as a clone, I found that I don't seem to need to exert myself anymore." The clone John stared blankly at the sky in front of him, a smile playing on his lips. "This feeling of no pressure is so great. Now I can do whatever I want." Chapter 177 Cosmic Structure. The clone John lay on the cold ground beneath the main god's body. As the god of slaughter who had just massacred the entire demon squad, his mind was already contemplating how to spend the remaining tens of thousands of reward points earned by his original self. As for becoming stronger and seeking revenge, that was laughable. He had a mountain of problems in the real world to deal with, he couldn't care less. Before, because he was tall, he had to hold up the sky. Now, as a clone, let the original hold up the sky if it fell, he could just enjoy himself. When he got tired of playing, or encountered an enemy he couldn't defeat, he could simply summon the original. After all, their thoughts were aligned. They both tacitly understood that they were the people who understood each other best in the world. As mentioned before, John Kent's race was John Kent. This was a shared understanding, so as members of the same race, they would never betray each other. Knowing this, the clone John had never had such a wonderful start. What should I do next? Lying on the ground, the clone John stared blankly into space. What should I do next? Throw a silver party? The moment this thought crossed his mind, the clone John sprang to his feet and charged at the glowing god before him, shouting, "God, exchange 10 years of time in the nightmare on Elm Street world for me. I'm going to throw a silver party for 10 years. His voice trailed off as his figure vanished for a moment before the clone Zheng Zha and Lolly's stunned gazes, then reappeared with a blissful expression, saying, "That was awesome. Hey, right." The returned clone John suddenly remembered something and looked at the clone Zheng Zha. "Your Majesty, is something the matter?" The clone Zheng Zha clung to Lolly fearfully, afraid that the guy might unleash his beastly nature. The clone John asked curiously, "I'm just wondering, didn't the original tell you not to create Lolly?" "It's because at his level, there's a special feeling that creating her wouldn't end well for you personally. Originally, my original thought that you, the clone, would be raped by the demon team after creating her, but you guys were lucky to run into me." The clone John looked at the clone Zheng Zha and the clone Lolly, revealing a very smug expression, and said, "Now it seems the unlucky one is your original." "My original?" Zheng Zha asked, puzzled. "You're talking about this Hongzhou team's me, but this Hongzhou team has your Majesty's original body. How could anyone threaten me? Is it possible that the threat comes from my original body?" John laughed. "Ha ha ha ha, Your original body is definitely going to be in trouble. I'll look forward to the moment you meet. The clone Zhang Zha, who should have been filled with bitterness and hatred, has been saved, retaining the innocence of his young heart, while the Zhang Zha who originally valued teamwork may fall into the abyss. This development is really too interesting, ha 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 ha. The clone John burst into maniacal laughter. Seeing John burst into laughter, the clone Zhang Zha was momentarily bewildered, feeling that compared to the original John, this clone seemed rather neurotic. Inside the main god space where the Central Continent team was located, the members who had been injected with T-virus blood were excitedly performing high-difficulty acrobatics for each other. Meanwhile, in John's room, John was internally observing every cell in his body. Through 10 years of accumulation through the exchange with the main god, he had now completely fulfilled his initial plan, stuffing a star into every cell. His strength had increased billions of times compared to 10 years ago. He could shatter a galaxy with a wave of his hand. But even so, he still hadn't reached the so-called infinite realm. So, simply accumulating quantity can't achieve infinity? How did Jinzhao manage to reach multidimensionality in just tens of thousands of years? Was it due to individual specialties or other reasons? John murmured to himself, his handsome face expressionless, revealing neither joy nor sorrow. During the 10 years he spent in the God realm, he didn't simply waste time. Instead, he developed a technological path rooted in the laws of physics, grounded in the technologies of Earth, Krypton, and Apocalypse, and utilizing his super brain for exploration. In the 5th year, each of his 50 trillion cells contained a nuclear fusion reactor, and through technological means, he was able to tear apart the world's barriers to open a directional passage back to the God realm. In the 7th year, his strength had reached the level of the cosmic structure, and he even took the time to study the 5 gems in his ring. If he wanted, he could instantly annihilate a space the size of the observable universe. However, the cosmic annihilation bomb he developed through technological means could easily turn the universe to dust even before he reached his full strength. By the 10th year, even with a blazing star inside every cell of his body, and having successfully mastered the 5 attributes of space, spirit, soul, power, and reality through the 5 infinity stones, his strength remained at the level of the cosmic structure. And with the help of technology, he could now recreate the elements of earth, wind, water, and fire, restart the entire universe, and return everything to the singularity before the Big Bang. It can only be said that humanity's technological research is mainly focused on destruction. If there were more time, he planned to develop a multiverse destruction device according to his ideas, aiming to cause a chain reaction in the multiverse through the destruction of a single universe, ultimately leading to the annihilation of multiple worlds. Unfortunately, before this device could be developed, the 10-year return period was over. John, whose experimental rhythm had been interrupted, was too lazy to continue climbing upwards through technological means and instead prepared to return to his main job. John was not in a hurry to improve his strength. Just as he said when he abandoned the system, he had already planned his future step by step. Next, I just need to get the time stone. After 10 years of accumulation, it's time to realize my original idea. Inside the room, John gently closed his eyes, preparing to rest. As for Zhang Zha and the others outside, for several days in a row, there was no movement in His Majesty's room. Zhang Ji would occasionally come out to chat with him, but John's door had never been opened. Zhang Zha and the others didn't dare disturb John's rest. With John leading the way, they didn't feel the pressure of the original story, so their 10 days in the God space felt like a vacation. They could exchange a few reward points for a huge pile of ordinary items, so they indulged in a luxurious lifestyle. While enjoying themselves, they would occasionally train their strength, and at night they would watch horror movies in case they encountered something new during their missions. On the 10th day, everyone came to the square with heavy hearts, looking at the unopened gate. Has His Majesty not come out yet? Zonlan gently touched her forehead and asked the others, her mind still replaying the memories of her time alone with John in the square. Chapter 178 Zhang Ji, let's unlock the first tier gene lock. About 10 more minutes passed in the main god plaza. The orb of light, the main god, grew increasingly dazzling, its intense light becoming as scorching and bright as the sun. Then, 20 beams of light shot down from it, appearing in the plaza. The same voice echoed in everyone's minds, enter the beams within 30 seconds, target locked, final destination to initiating teleportation. Time's almost up, if we don't get in soon. Li Xiaoyi said anxiously. According to Zhang Ji, if they hadn't entered the main god's beams by the time it reached zero, they might be obliterated. However, they had some doubts about whether the main god could obliterate John. More than anything, they were worried. What if John wasn't obliterated by the main god and simply returned to reality, leaving them to face a horror movie? That would be truly terrifying. After all, this was Final Destination, far too bizarre for someone like them with small arms and legs. While the others were stunned, Zhonglan seized the opportunity to try and run out of the beams to knock on the door. But the next moment, with a creak, the door to John's room was pushed open, and an incredibly handsome young man with striking features stepped out. Your Majesty, you've arrived. Li Xiaoyi shouted excitedly upon seeing John, but then froze, noticing a drastic change in the young man's demeanor and appearance. John, dressed casually, gave a soft hem in response to Li Xiaoyi, then took a step forward. The space before him seemed to be compressed layer by layer, sending him into a circle of light. What happened? Everyone rubbed their eyes, staring incredulously at John entering the circle of light. Every movement was clearly visible, yet incomprehensible. It was as if the process had been erased, a single step covering tens of meters, something they couldn't do even if they tore their hips apart. But before they could react, the countdown to the main god had completely reached zero, and then everyone present except John lost consciousness. The principles of space have been basically analyzed. Looking at the changing environment, John's eyes seemed to sparkle with countless stars. He finally let out a long breath and said, just waiting for the time stone to arrive. Once everyone was fully conscious, they found themselves in a bus. Strangely, there were no other passengers on the bus, only 14 newcomers lying haphazardly on the floor. 20-person difficulty, Final Destination? Zhang Zha and the others looked at the newcomers lying before them. Having only experienced one horror movie, they had no idea how terrifying this difficulty was. While the newcomers were still unconscious, they checked their watches. The display showed that the mission was to survive for 5 days. Those still alive after 5 days would return to the main god space, and for each surviving story character, they would receive an additional 500 reward points. If no story characters died, they would receive one B-level side quest, rewarding 5,000 points. However, if a member of the reincarnation team killed a story character, each member would lose 5,000 reward points. Looks like I'm being targeted. John looked at the data on his wristwatch. He'd scored 120,000 points on the last horror movie, but this time he'd been thrown into high difficulty, low-score horror film. I thought it was Juan. John's lips curled slightly as he looked at Zhang Ji beside him. Zhang Ji's expression was stiff. And he gave a bitter laugh, saying, the captain selection has already started. This horror movie is a life or death situation, so please let me live for 5 more days. As he spoke, Zhang Ji released a beautiful woman he was holding and pleaded with John. At this moment, Zhang Zha and the others, who had been mentally manipulated earlier, were stunned to discover that Zhang Ji had actually brought his creation device with him. So that pillar of light could actually hold multiple people? Zhang Ji, why did you bring your sister-in-law with you? The crowd asked in astonishment, not understanding Zhang Ji's motives for bringing his woman into this kind of horror movie. Zhang Ji ignored them. They had only known each other for 10 days, and their feelings for each other hadn't developed yet. He continued to plead with John silently through his eyes. Faced with Zhang Ji's plea, John gently shook his head. In Zhang Ji's despairing gaze, he slowly said, I refuse. You don't deserve to waste 5 days of my time. Activate your Tier 1 gene lock. As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible force surged forth, enveloping Zhang Ji and the beautiful woman, then easily twisting their bodies into a pretzel. The immense pressure, like wringing a towel, caused Zhang Ji's blood to spurt from his body, splattering throughout the bus interior, staining the once transparent glass a blood red hue. Although the blood didn't stain the Central State team members, this explicit scene still sent chills down everyone's spines, a cold shiver running from the soles of their feet to the top of their heads. What's wrong with His Majesty? Why is he suddenly going on a killing spree? If he's next to kill us, will we survive? Zhang Zha's heart pounded like a drum. Even though John hadn't made a move, under the extreme pressure of death, he subconsciously entered gene lock mode, wanting to strike first, but he forcibly restrained himself. Considering John's previous behavior, Zhonglan chose to temporarily believe that John wouldn't act without reason, and suppressed her fear, asking, Your Majesty, Did Zhang Ji do something wrong? John didn't answer. In his ears, the solemn voice of the Supreme God rang out, "The position of captain of the Central Continent team is activated. Gene Lock Strength Assessment, base strength is, no Gene Lock unlocked, Evolution 1 stage, current strength is the first stage of Gene Lock unlocking, fusion begins." As the Supreme God's voice fell, to everyone's astonishment, John's body slowly emerged from the ground, and some points of light floated out from Zhang Ji's twisted corpse, continuously flowing into John's body. This was akin to exchanging enhanced attributes in the God space. Countless points of light continuously entered John's body and then disappeared. Although floating in the air, unlike the other captain's enhancements, John hadn't lost consciousness. He turned around and said, "Simply put, Zhang Ji is a spy planted among us by the God. His mission is to choose a captain from among us." As he spoke, seeing their blank expressions, John grew impatient. Although his body couldn't move, a surge of mental power directly and brutally invaded their defenseless consciousness. The next moment, their minds were filled with a wealth of knowledge, such as the captain selection process, Zhang Ji's mission, and the reason for the God space's appearance, and so on. "Understood?" John asked softly, receiving a unanimous nod from them. Chapter 179 Zhao Yingquang's defeat CG. As John completed the captain selection and entered the integration phase, a bespectacled man who had been observing him coldly for a long time saluted John and said, "Colonel Chujuan of the Dragon Shadow Military Base, Earth Central Special District, Earth Federation Number 14, greets your Majesty." Everyone was stunned by Chujuan's upright posture and salute. Had a high-ranking military officer entered? "How long has it been on Earth?" John asked, turning his head. 27 days have passed since you liberated our planet," Chujuan replied loudly, adjusting his glasses. But the next moment, a slender figure swung an incredibly white hand through the air, aiming for John's neck. The attack was incredibly swift. Zhang Zha and the others didn't even have time to unlock their genetic locks and were naturally unable to react. However, Chujuan had anticipated this and kicked out fiercely, striking the figure directly in the abdomen. The figure spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward, crashing into the back seat of the bus. "Is this a newcomer?" Zhang Zha and the others had the same thought they had had with Zhang Ji, staring in astonishment at Chujuan, who resembled a tyrannical dragon. Only then did everyone realize that the assassin was actually a handsome young man. No, it should be called a girl, because she didn't have an Adam's apple. She was a strikingly beautiful girl with a somewhat androgynous appearance, and compared to her tattered clothes, her skin was incredibly soft and fair, creating a striking contrast. "This technique, and the black smart terminal on your arm, you must be from an assassin family," Chujuan said indifferently, adjusting his glasses as he stood in front of John. "When the Earth Federation liberated the country, your assassin family led the opposition, and as a result, you were all classified as D-level personnel and forced into large-scale manual labor. Now you want to assassinate His Majesty. Do you know what the consequences will be for your surviving family members if the Earth Federation finds out?" Chujuan spoke calmly, but his words practically screamed, "How dare you assassinate His Majesty? You deserve to die." "Hey, you're blocking my way," John said unhappily from behind Chujuan. After Chujuan consciously moved away, John turned his gaze to the assassin who had tried to kill him. Upon seeing the girl before him, a question began to linger in his mind. What happened to the last person who tried to assassinate him? It seemed like it was 10 years ago, a girl named Linda. He'd only been trained for a few days before she was sent to Hellish Snow's place for some business. "Hey, you don't want your so-called assassin family to be wiped out, do you?" John floated in the air, speaking bluntly, "As the price for assassinating me, if you willingly serve me for one night, I might consider not pursuing the matter." Everyone stared at John speechlessly. His words were far too direct, especially coming from a top-tier handsome young man uttering such a blatant threat. It felt incredibly incongruous. Logically speaking, with John's current power and status, he could easily have any women he wanted. Even Rodriguez's offer to hold a beauty pageant for him was rejected. Given John's looks and abilities, if he had chosen to be humble and use a gentle approach, like a scumbag, he could have easily won the girl's heart. But instead, he chose such a blatant threat. Unfortunately, John's self-perception was that of a scumbag, not a scumbag. If he was interested, why use gentleness when he could rape her? She was an assassin, after all. A failed assassination would have consequences. Wouldn't it be more reasonable to enter a game like Defeat CG scene like baby-faced, big-breasted female assassin? Failure and humiliation? Don't even think about it. Even with the girl's coldness, she was angered by John's provocation. She snorted and tried to charge again. But John merely glanced at her, and a terrifying mental force emanated from him, simulating the Mind Stone's power, instantly freezing the girl in midair. Seeing the murderous intent in her eyes, yet her body unable to move, John slowly said, "Since you disagree, even better. I won't even pay for your services. After I'm done with you, I'll wipe out your entire family. Besides, compared to your perhaps clumsy service techniques, controlling your body with my mind seems to allow for even more possibilities." John's words were like a double-edged sword. Then, with you fully conscious, toying with you will feel even more exciting. Under his mental control, the girl helplessly watched her body move against her will, slowly walking towards John, before standing behind him like a servant. "Look, wouldn't you say the assassin was captivated by my charisma, even if she struggled internally, her body still honestly siding with me?" John muttered to himself. The entire Central Plains team watched in a cold sweat, feeling that their emperor had absolutely no idol image to maintain, was purely evil, and made no attempt to hide his scumbag nature. Just as they were talking, the dozen or so newcomers on the side finally awoke from their unconsciousness. The moment these people opened their eyes, they found themselves surrounded by a group of people, with a handsome young man floating in front of them. Countless points of light were peeling off a twisted corpse and flowing into John's body. "Wow, I woke up so fast. I actually saw His Majesty floating in the air in front of me." A burly white man rubbed his eyes and said, but after realizing he wasn't dreaming, he leaped up from the ground in astonishment, exclaiming, "His Majesty?" The newcomers were the same. Seeing John floating in the air, they were all dumbfounded. The highest official they had ever seen in reality was at most a county magistrate, yet they had actually witnessed the emperor stepping into reality. "Where is this? And him, isn't this His Majesty?" A beautiful woman in a sexy nightgown got up from the car, looking at the floating young man in surprise. "You guys explain it to them. Once I'm finished merging, I can return to the main god space," John said to the Central Continent team, looking at the constantly emerging points of light with some dissatisfaction. It wasn't finished yet, their bodies were about to stiffen. The main god's efficiency was a bit slow. "My name is Zonlan. Let me explain where we are." Looking at the stunned crowd, Zonlan lightly touched her forehead and stepped forward, saying, "First of all, this is indeed our emperor. And this is the horror movie Final Destination 2, see the god-themed wristwatches on your left wrists?" With Zonlan's explanation, the newcomers basically understood their situation. With John's on-the-spot confirmation, no one doubted their location. At that moment, the light spots floating around Zhangji finally disappeared completely. With the captain selection concluded, the horror movie ended briefly and hastily. Chapter 184th Order Lustful Demon? Is this the gene lock? The moment John returned to the main god space, countless pieces of information surged in his eyes as he observed the subtle changes in the cellular structure within his body, which contained billions of stars. A sense of understanding seemed to dawn on him. Although it's called the gene lock, it's actually more of a concept. It's related to genes, but not extensively. It's more of a purely conceptual atavism. Is it named that because the human body is fragile? Each activation causes cellular collapse due to the body's inability to withstand the strain? John spoke, and in an instant, an overwhelming aura erupted from within him. First level, second level, third level. In less than a second, John activated 3 levels of the gene lock in succession. This momentum only abruptly stopped at the peak of the 3rd level. He didn't stop because John couldn't do it. If he wanted, he could easily step into the 4th level of the gene lock in the next moment. The reason he stopped was simply because his mind told him that activating the next level of the gene lock would not be good for him. Why can't I activate it? Can a 4th level inner demon have any effect on me? John frowned slightly, wondering if his premonition was wrong, just like the one he had when he advised Zheng Zha against creating humans. Now, his premonition was even clearer, as if it were telling him from the depths of his being that Zheng Zha's misfortune in creating humans was his own doing. So, my 4th-tier inner demon is a lust demon. John was completely baffled. What kind of inner demon was this, so deformed? He glanced at the people around him curiously observing the main god space, hesitated for a moment, and then decided not to enter the 4th tier here. You can choose what to exchange for yourselves. The next horror movie is Starship Troopers and Team Battle, John said calmly. As the captain, he had the authority to know what the next movie was. Because the horror movie ended early, no characters died at this moment. The 19 members of the Central Continent team didn't have to do anything. Each of them received 5,000 reward points and a B-level side quest. John squatted down, looking at the two deformed bodies he had brought, twisted like pretzels. He took out an hourglass-like object from his special ring and gently placed it in front of the two of them. Under the astonished gazes of this Hongzhou team, Zhang Ji and his creation, killed by John, began to slowly return to normal under the influence of time. After a dozen seconds, Zhang Ji's restored body suddenly sat up from the ground with a scream. In his mind, he still had the last image before his death, his creation twisted into a pretzel. But when he turned his head, he found his creation lying unharmed beside him, as if everything had just happened was a dream. Zhang Ji, Zhang Zha and the others stepped forward and looked at the resurrected Zhang Ji, happily accepting the resurrection of their comrade. Zhang Ji also understood his current situation. He hugged his creation tightly and then sincerely thanked John. "Thank you, Your Majesty. If it weren't for you, thank you for helping me escape from the God of War." John nodded slightly. In fact, as long as one has the ability of the 4th tier mid-level, one does not need to fear the God of War's annihilation. While the ability of the 4th tier high level can protect teammates from being annihilated by the God of War. With his current technological abilities, while he couldn't achieve anything as miraculous as the Time Stone, reversing time to resurrect a dead person was still a piece of cake. The only difference was whether he wanted to or not. He casually ripped the wristwatch off Zhang Ji's wrist, tossed the two of them back from the god space to the real world, and looked at Zhao Yingkong, who had previously tried to assassinate him. He felt that his inner demon's lecherous nature stemmed from the fact that he had spent the 10 years he had exchanged in the god space conducting research, without a normal sex life. Therefore, he needed to properly release himself and suppress his inner demon. "That's my room," John instructed, pointing to a door in the god space. "Go into my room, take off your clothes, and do the splits while I favor you." Under Zhao Yingguang's humiliated and indignant gaze, her body uncontrollably moved towards the room, then gently opened the door and went inside. "This His Majesty is truly carefree," Zhonglan said speechlessly. Any slight goodwill she had towards John before was now completely shattered. "You guys go play by yourselves, I'm going to suppress my inner demons." John glanced at the group, then opened the door and went inside. He immediately saw Yi Xianshan performing a difficult split in front of him. "I feel, although I haven't reached level 4, my lustful demon, no, I should say my inner demons, have already surged forth." Watching the high-difficulty acrobatic moves, John, who was keen on learning, felt his artistic talents were being nurtured. Next is punishment time. John stepped forward under Zhao Yingguang's humiliated and indignant gaze. Half an hour later, Zhao Yingguang's main personality was awakened by John, whose eyes lit up as he continued his deep exploration. An hour later, under John's guidance, Zhao Yingguang overcame the inner demons of the initial level 4 gene lock. 2 hours later, having overcome her inner demons, Zhao Yingguang's main and secondary personalities began to succumb to John's deep exploration, experiencing mental confusion, with saliva constantly spilling from the corners of her mouth. But John did not stop exploring her potential. 3 hours later, Zhao Yingguang's body began to give way to John's deep exploration, forcing him to stop. After restructuring her body to triple her sensitivity, dozens of times her strength, and hundreds of times her healing speed, John confirmed there were no problems and continued his in-depth exploration. 10 hours later, John released his mental control over Zhao Yingguang, but she no longer resisted. After 10 hours of John's exploration, Zhao Yingguang's consciousness had completely shrunk to the shape of a cream puff. Even when John disgustedly pushed her aside, she would instinctively cling to him. 12 hours later, John faithfully fulfilled his promise. He said he would only stay one night and wouldn't further explore Zhao Yingguang's body, but it was Zhao Yingguang, whose mind and body had been completely explored, who refused. Looking at the girl with a youthful face and large breasts, clinging to him and pleading incessantly, John had no choice but to shake his head and say, "This is what you asked for. Sigh, you've really put me through this. I can only reluctantly grant your request," John said helplessly, shaking his head. And then reluctantly began his in-depth exploration again. Meanwhile, 15 hours after John entered the room, Chujuan looked at everyone and said, "I found a way back to the real world. Is the plot moving too fast? Let's slow it down a bit." Chapter 181 Supernatural Investigation Bureau. Chujuan bit his finger and said, "Although we can only go back temporarily, and we have to use expensive reward points, we can definitely return to reality." Return to reality? Everyone stared at Chujuan in astonishment. Compared to all the deductions he had made before, this was the most shocking to them. Zhang Zha and the others, who hadn't yet been fully taken in by Chujuan's schemes, were staring at him curiously, asking, "What exactly is this method? If I had the chance, I'd really like to go back and see my parents." Chujuan glanced at Zhang Zha and explained, "You probably haven't seen the detailed exchange for living days, have you? I checked it carefully yesterday, and I discovered that you can not only exchange for living days in the horror movie worlds you've just experienced, but also return to reality. I'm not talking about spending 50,000 reward points to go back. When exchanging for ordinary living days, I discovered a recording function that records the 2 movies you've already experienced, Resident Evil 1 and Final Destination 2. Besides that, there's another option, the real world. You only need to use 1D level side quest to activate the return to reality function, and it costs 50 reward points per day." Chujuan pointed out the requirements and then fell silent. Sure enough, the next moment, Mu Gang stepped forward and said, "I need to go back. Although I'm doing well here under His Majesty's protection, I still have a wife and children in the real world. I'm not doing well in reality either. They must have suffered a lot after disappearing for so long. I need to exchange some supplies here to take back to them before I come back." As Mu Gang spoke, everyone else became restless. Because of John's presence, they weren't particularly concerned about the reward points at the moment. The newcomers were even more eager. They had earned 5,000 reward points from watching a horror movie without doing anything, reaching 1/10 of the return requirement. Hearing that they could return to reality, they all wanted to go back even more. "Let's discuss how long we should go back," Zonlan said, looking at the eager crowd. Remembering John's 10-year experience on A Nightmare on Elm Street, she suggested, returning to reality should be like in other horror movies. No matter how much time has passed, it'll be a blink of an eye for the god's space. Although the god doesn't know how it does it, we don't need to disrupt time. Those who want to go back should discuss it and exchange for the same amount of time together. At Zonlan's suggestion, everyone agreed. After some discussion, they decided that those who wanted to go back would exchange for 5 days together, figuring they could always exchange again if needed later. With the discussion complete, Zhang Zha, among the returning crowd, casually exchanged for a cubic meter of gold and put it into his newly purchased special ring, joining the others under the god's sphere of light. Zonlan looked at the beautiful woman beside her, who had just experienced a horror movie, and said, "Yanwei, don't you want to go back?" The beautiful woman looked at the group of excited people surrounding the sphere of light and shook her head with some boredom, saying, "There's no one I care about in the real world anymore. I just didn't expect that emperor to be this kind of scum." "Don't say any more." Zonlan quickly covered Ming Yanwei's mouth, saying, "He can hear you." The beautiful woman wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she felt a sense of disillusionment. On the 3rd day of the Earth Federation's rule over the world, she and her boyfriend were driving when they were surrounded by a group of thugs who wanted to assault her. Faced with this situation, her boyfriend, Zhang Heng, suddenly had a psychological breakdown and abandoned her, leaving her to face the thugs alone. Originally, she was supposed to be wantonly violated by those people, but because everyone was wearing the Earth Federation's smart terminals, they were directly knocked to the ground by the electric current in their wristbands, and she used this time to escape home. Heartbroken by her boyfriend's betrayal, Ming Yanwei was utterly devastated, even though the events of the original story didn't actually occur. After a month of aimless wandering, she received an invitation to the main god space. There, she discovered that she, the so-called Emperor of the Earth Federation, was no different from those petty thugs she had encountered before, and there were no laws to punish her. While Ming Yanwei pondered this, the others around the sphere of light had completed their exchanges and disappeared into the main god space. In a house in the central special district of Earth, the 14th Earth Federation, Mu Gang emerged from his computer, a message from the main god appearing in his mind. During his 5-day stay in the real world, he was forbidden from revealing anything about the main god space in any way, or everything he owned would be erased. And before the return time, He had to return to this place. The main god would take him back to the main god space. Recalling the extra information in his mind, an excited voice rang out beside him, "Gangzi? Where have you been all these days?" Hearing the familiar voice, Mu Gang hurriedly turned around, and sure enough, his wife in the real world was excitedly running up and hugging him tightly. Being hugged like this, Mu Gang couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt, because he remembered the creation he had made in the main god space. To make up for his guilt, he smiled and said to his wife, "Listen, we're rich now. Whether we're rich or not is another matter." A cold voice rang out from the side, and an orange portal appeared, from which a tall man in a blue and white uniform walked out. "Citizen Mu Gang, can you tell me how you managed to disappear for 34 days straight while carrying your smart terminal?" Mu Gang swallowed hard, looking at the cold-faced man before him. Who are you?" The man in the blue and white uniform looked at Mu Gang and showed his identification. "Earth Federation, under the Supernatural Investigation Division of the Security Bureau. My name is Li Jing. Please cooperate with the investigation." "Supernatural Investigation Division?" Mu Gang stammered. "What kind of department is that?" "Come with me to the bureau, and someone will explain it to you," Li Jing said, seeing that the man still looked confused, and stepped forward to forcibly take him away. "Honey, have you committed a crime? If not, just explain it clearly." His wife wanted to explain and defend him, but Mu Gang instinctively resisted when he saw Li Jing's outstretched arm. Explain? If he revealed the existence of the main god space, he would be wiped out. It was better to escape and return to the main god space after 5 days. Chapter 182 Li Gui meets Li Kui. Seeing Li Jing's hand reaching for him, Mu Gang snorted coldly. Having been injected with a T-virus serum and unlocked his first tier gene lock, he didn't think he would be suppressed by the main world, and without hesitation, he slapped the other's hand away. "Still dare to resist? This isn't an ordinary suspect, you're dead." Li Jing's eyes widened, and under Mu Gang's terrified gaze, he instantly grew to 5 meters tall. The Hulk?" Mu Gang stammered. "It's abomination, damn it," Li Jing said in a muffled voice. The next moment, his huge web feet slammed into the ground, creating a crater 4 or 5 meters in diameter, and he rushed forward at supersonic speed, grabbing Mu Gang by the neck and slamming him to the ground like a dead dog. Not only Mu Gang's group, but most of this Hong Zhao team members, shortly after landing, once their smart terminals connected to the network, were immediately found by the Supernatural Investigation Department and all were rounded up. But there was one exception, and that was Zheng Zha and Lori's group. After returning to the real world, the two weren't pursued like others, but instead returned home safely. However, upon opening the door, they were shocked by the 4 people in their house. Standing before Zheng Zha were 2 young men who looked exactly like his parents, and the other 2 were himself and Lolly. "Who are you?" Zheng Zha exclaimed, pointing at the clones of himself and Lolly. The 2 men opposite him were clearly also taken aback. Then, the man who looked exactly like him smiled and greeted Zheng Zha, saying, "Looks like your choice is the same as mine, original. Son, you're back too." The man and woman who looked exactly like his parents greeted Zheng Zha at the door without any surprise. Only then did Zheng Zha realize that the 2 young people in front of him were his parents. He exclaimed incredulously, "Mom and Dad, how did you become so young?" "Oh, you know our health isn't very good, so the Earth Federation, to prevent premature death among the elderly with poor health, implemented this benefit a year early, injecting each of us with lizard serum. Now, each of us can live for at least 200 or 300 years. Zheng's father said, suddenly throwing a punch forward, the air swirling through the window and rustling the leaves on the trees several meters away. Zheng Zha stared wide-eyed at his rejuvenated parents. From that punch, he could tell that their physical condition was now stronger than his own, even after receiving the T-virus serum and unlocking his first tier gene lock. Even though he hadn't exerted much effort in the God realm, mostly relying on John's power to get by, he felt a surge of resentment. This strength came too easily. What was the point of his time in the God realm then? We'll talk about the specifics later. The clone Zheng Zha smiled and brought out a plate of dumplings from the kitchen. Now we should eat dumplings with Mom and Dad. Seeing the clone Zheng Zha's smiling face and the clone Luoli's shy wave, Zheng Zha, even though completely bewildered, had no choice but to sit down and finish the meal with him. After the meal, Zheng Zha wanted to take out a cubic meter of gold from his storage ring, but the clone Zhang Zha stopped him. "It seems you haven't integrated into this place yet. I came back a few days earlier, so I know a little more than you. In the current Earth Federation, raw materials like gold aren't actually worth much. There's plenty in the universe. You can get as much as you want by opening up a spatial channel. Besides, the price of goods is basically zero now, so giving us gold is meaningless." The clone Zhang Zha explained with a smile, then gave Zhang Zha a look, signaling him to go outside and fully explain his origins to the original. "So, you're my clone," Zhang Zha pondered. "It seems this is why His Majesty forbade me from creating humans. Fortunately, you're all alright." "No, actually, this calamity of creating humans was meant for you." The clone Zhang Zha hesitated before finally stating the clone John's reasoning. "You mean, it's actually my lolly who will be raped by His Majesty?" Zhang Zha's eyes widened, and the thought of that scene unleashed a surge of murderous intent. "That's possible," the clone Zhang Zha said hesitantly, unsure if it was a good thing to say it. Thinking of the clone John's various orgies and debauchery in the previous horror movie, even going so far as to seduce female ghosts, he had no guarantee of the original John's integrity. After their conversation outside, Zhang Zha looked at Lolly chatting and laughing with her family, and his heart sank. If it weren't for the memories that God had given him that he couldn't leave God's creations in reality, he wouldn't have dared to bring Lolly back to the God's space. Recalling John's terrifying strength, he knew he absolutely couldn't guarantee Lolly's safety, and wouldn't even have the chance to fight back. 5 days passed in this heavy heart, misunderstood by everyone. Before leaving, the clone Zhang Zha looked at the departing main body and said, "Take this." "What's this?" Zhang Zha looked at the fluorescent pendant in his hand. "The time stone. A man named Strange gave it to me. He told me to give it to you to deliver to His Majesty in the main God space," the clone Zhang Zha said. "The time stone? The one from Marvel?" Zhang Zha gasped, looking at the pendant in his hand, his heart pounding wildly. Carefully putting away the time stone, Zhang Zha took Lolly back to where they had come from. After the countdown reached 0, they were teleported back into the main God space. To the people in the main God space, only a moment had passed, and then, apart from Lolly, none of the previously excited people returned happy. Like Mu Gang, covered in wounds, he cried out miserably to the orb of light, "God, heal me. Reward points will be deducted from yourselves." "What happened?" Zonlan and the others approached with concern. "How did you get so badly injured?" Chu Zhuan, mingling among the team members, looked at the wounded and injured, feigning innocence with a blank expression. "Of course, it's because of the Earth Federation," Mu Gang complained after his recovery. "As soon as we landed, our smart terminals connected to the internet, and then a team of investigators arrested us. I only slightly resisted, and they hung me up and whipped me for 5 days. Do you know how I spent those days?" "Yes," Ba Wang nodded in lingering fear. "If they hadn't released us for some reason, we would have been wiped out by the God long ago." Zhang Zha looked at the miserable group around him, wondering, "Investigators? I didn't encounter any of them," but just as he was pondering this, a rather cold voice rang in his ear, "Did you bring the things?" Zhang Zha was startled and turned his head in fear, only to see John standing beside him, extending his right hand towards him. "Killing intent? This guy wants to kill me." John frowned slightly as he observed the panicked emotion Zhang Zha displayed. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Multi-Level Inner Demons. Inside the God's Realm, John frowned slightly, observing the unconscious mental fluctuations emanating from Zhang Zha. "I haven't offended him, have I?" This inexplicable killing intent, John began to consider whether to kill Zhang Zha here. Seeing John approach, Zhang Zha hurriedly retrieved the eye of Agamotto from his storage ring and handed it to him, saying, "Your Majesty, Strange asked me to give this to you." After some thought, Zhang Zha decided to keep the matter of the clone a secret, as revealing it would only arouse John's suspicion. Little did he know that his unconscious emotional fluctuations had already revealed much. John gave the man before him a deep look, finally taking the eye of Agamotto from Zhang Zha's hand and strolling to the God sphere. The Nightmare on Elm Street option had disappeared due to Zhang Ji's account cancellation with the God's Realm. Only Resident Evil and Final Destination 2 remained. So John said calmly, "God, send me to the plane of death comes for 3 days, on the moon." As soon as he finished speaking, John's figure disappeared from the god's space, reappearing on the vast moon, where he could see the azure planet in the distance with just a glance. The Time Stone. John looked at the Eye of Agamotto in his hand and casually put it away. After all, his purpose here wasn't to study the Time Stone, but to try and unlock the 4th-tier gene lock. Thinking of the premonition he had before trying to unlock it, John was extremely curious. What could a mere 4th-tier inner demon possibly have to influence his will? The next moment, the long-suppressed bottleneck was instantly broken. Sensing the changes in this so-called 4th-tier gene lock, John's expression changed slightly. A feeling of profound compassion welled up within him, and his expression instantly became solemn. The 4th-tier gene lock, also known as the subtlety stage, allows powerful individuals to alter their genes. At the initial stage of Tier 4, one can optimize and adjust their genes to reach their strongest combat state, controlling every bit of power and tapping into the potential of every gene to fully unleash their potential. John had previously overlooked one crucial point: his body wasn't the original body from the Infinite Terror world, but rather evolved from the bloodline of the original Superman, after being modified by the strongest Superman system. Upon entering the initial stage of Tier 4, the original Superman cells within his body began automatically adjusting their genes, continuously modifying him towards the Kryptonian body found in the infinite multiverse of the DC Universe: Silver Superman, Golden Superman, Supreme Little Superman, Injustice Superman, Superpower, Magic Superman. At this moment, John's eyes seemed to see countless Superman templates unfolding before him. Without relying on the system's abilities, he seemed to possess the power to arbitrarily alter his own genes. However, while he could modify the concept of genes, his will was also altered in the opposite direction by the wills of these Supermen. In the DC multiverse templates, in most universes, the strongest Kryptonian is essentially Clark Kent. Most Clark Kents possess a level of kindness that allows them to sacrifice themselves for the world. While there are still injustices like Superman and Superpowered, these exceptions have negligible impact on the will of Superman across the infinite multiverse. Therefore, John is not currently fighting against the inner demons of the so-called 4th-order genetic lock, but rather the influence of the shared personality of countless Clarks within the DC multiverse. Under the reverse invasion and modification of Superman's will, although John immediately deactivated the 4th-order genetic lock and the soul and spirit stones in his ring shone brightly, the effect, though only momentary, was still a mental attack exceeding the multiverse level. Subtly and silently, the remaining goodness within John's soul began to erupt, suppressing his evil thoughts. John's eyes instantly became compassionate, recalling his past experiences, and 2 streams of tears flowed from his eyes. "I've done so many terrible things. I'm a beast among beasts. I even raped Zhao Yinkong, turning her into a cream puff. All of this was created through violence." On the silent moon, tears streamed down John's face as he recalled his past. A wave of guilt washed over him. "I should atone for my sins, starting with this universe. 5 days is enough time for me to build a harmonious society for all living beings in this universe. When I get back, I must apologize to Zhao Yinkong, and then fuck her a few more times. Her body is so smooth," John thought to himself, filled with remorse, but the next moment he was horrified by his own thoughts. "What's wrong with me? Why am I thinking this?" John was startled, then found his right hand rising uncontrollably, before he swung it forward with all his might. It was just a simple, powerful straight punch, delivered with all his might. At this moment, his strength was beyond comprehension. In terms of sheer power, he could easily lift all the matter in the observable universe with just one finger. Driven by this terrifying power, his right fist, imbued with a biofield, reached 99.9999999% of the speed of light through sheer speed, infinitely approaching true light speed. Before this punch, the space before him was distorted into the shape of his right hand. The moon beneath his feet was shattered, even its atomic nuclei destroyed, and the scattering aftershocks dissipated in all directions at the speed of light. Driven by this terrifying force, a second later, billions of miles around him became a pure cosmic vacuum, devoid of any matter except for him. This vacuum would then expand outwards at sublight speed. A second later, this vacuum spread from the moon's original location to Earth, And then billions of Earthlings in the Death Comes universe, unaware of what was happening, had their entire bodies disintegrate into the quantum wave. 8 minutes later, the sun would also be reduced to sputtering particles. 8 years later, the solar system would be completely reduced to cosmic vacuum by this punch. Tens of thousands of years later, the Milky Way would also be reduced to nothingness by this punch, and would continue to expand outwards at the speed of light. If the universe had an infinite lifespan, over 40 billion years from now, all matter in the observable universe would vanish under that punch. But that was far too far for John at this moment. After throwing that punch, John stood on the empty side of the moon, staring in anguish at the vanished Earth before him. What have I done? Tears streamed down John's face as he silently regretted his actions in the desolate universe. He wanted to pull out the time stone to reverse the flow of time in the entire universe. But he found that his body no longer obeyed his commands. Chapter 184 The Strongest Green Hat System? I've been so kind, John murmured, looking at the planet he had destroyed. A person's spirit isn't composed of a single emotion. Whether it's the 7 deadly sins, pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust, or the 7 virtues, humility, tolerance, patience, diligence, generosity, temperance, and chastity, all are essential components of the spirit. Under the influence of that fleeting, multidimensional superhuman sense of justice, John's kindness began to grow uncontrollably, enough to transform him into a saint in the macrocosm of humanity, even if only for a moment. John's evil thoughts and lust were almost completely eradicated under this positive influence. But this wasn't a personality transformation. Although his character changed, John's past memories continued to subtly influence him. Recalling his past immediately made him aware of his wrongdoing. Before disappearing completely, John's rationality also realized that this so-called kindness wasn't part of his original character. Forcibly twisting his thoughts was no different from killing him. So even though he was in extreme pain, driven by reason, he still proceeded to completely destroy everything before him. John looked at everything in agony, blaming himself for the destruction, feeling it was all because of his good intentions. He couldn't accept that his good intentions had made things worse. Taking advantage of his grief, reason immediately devised a plan. Since you want me to become good, then I'll show you evil. John's reason made this judgment immediately. Looking at everything he had destroyed, it seemed there was no room left for evil, so John's consciousness immediately subsided, awaiting the teleportation of the Supreme God. 5 days later, as the time came, the orb of light in the Supreme God's space emitted a faint glow, and the next moment, it brought John's body back to the Supreme God's space. To everyone in the Supreme God's space, John's figure only flashed briefly before he collapsed to the ground, leaving everyone present stunned. Everyone stepped forward, ready to see what John was like, but they saw him calmly stand up, his brows filled with compassion, but his face showed an unprecedented panic. John shouted to the crowd in terror, "Run! Otherwise, I won't be able to control myself." What does that mean? The crowd was filled with questions when John appeared before Zonlan in an instant, solemnly saying, "I need your help with my cultivation." Cultivation, the thought flashed through Zonlan's mind. She saw John pick her up and take her back to his room. Seeing Zhao Yingguang instinctively pressing against him, John nodded slightly, tacitly approving of her joining in. The next moment, pieces of Zonlan's clothes flew everywhere, revealing her exposed skin. I'm sorry. As Zonlan screamed, clutching her pounding chest, tears streamed down John's face as he apologized. But guilt and apologies don't equal inaction. Although he kept apologizing and felt mortified, John didn't hesitate in his actions. While the crowd outside was still stunned, they heard a piercing scream coming from inside. "What on earth is your majesty doing?" Outside the door, Zhang Zha and the others were well aware of what was happening inside. But recalling John's panicked expression earlier, how could someone who had raped someone let them run first? Especially Zhang Zha. Hearing Zonlan's screams from inside and thinking of the prophecy about Lolly's fate, Zhang Zha's heart trembled. He then instinctively tried to pick up Lolly and take her back to the room. But the next moment, his shoulder was pressed down by a hand as strong as steel. "I'm sorry, Zhang Zha, I need to borrow your creation for a moment." A soft sigh, filled with pain, guilt, and countless other emotions, rang in Zhang Zha's ears. After the voice sounded, he realized that Lolly's figure had vanished, replaced by the familiar screams coming from John's room. "Lolly!" In that instant, Zhang Zha's eyes turned bloodshot. Driven by rage, he directly entered the second stage of the gene lock, then forcefully rushed to John's room door and punched with all his might. However, the power of the second tier was too weak for the main god. His all-out punch to the door produced only a loud bang, leaving no impact. Hearing the faint screams of Lali and Zunlan, the painful groans of Ming Yanwei, and the moans of Zhao Yingkong coming from inside, Zhang Zha pounded on the door with all his might. "You beast, let Lali go." Zhang Zha's fists pounded relentlessly on the door. Under the continuous attacks, the knuckles of his arms shattered, and finally, after the genetic lock was released, the severe after effects caused him to collapse to the ground in agony. Everyone else stared in astonishment at the closed door, completely understanding Zhang Zha's anger. Only Li Xiaoyi sighed, wondering why John hadn't used his own creations. Inside the room, although John was currently working on the woman, he felt no lust whatsoever. Instead, a surge of intense guilt welled up within him. "I'm truly the worst of the worst," John thought guiltily. But the more guilty he felt, the more swiftly and violently his body, controlled by reason, malice, and lust, moved, and the more intensely he exerted himself. At the same time, Goodface sadly realized that his influence was waning, and the compassion in John's eyes was diminishing, almost disappearing completely. Before being completely suppressed by reason, Goodface recalled his experiences in the past few minutes and realized that despite being Goodface, he hadn't done a single good deed. At this moment, he desperately wanted to do something good to prove himself. Listening to Zhang Zha's roar outside the door, Goodface looked at the lolly he had been working on and sighed softly. He felt he should make it up to Zhang Zha. Give him a system, call it the strongest man system, John thought, then was pleasantly surprised to find that he could use the abilities of the gems in his ring. The next moment, the 6 gems in the spatial ring shone brightly. The time, space, spirit, power, soul, and reality gems all exerted their power, and a voice suddenly rang in Zhang Zha's mind outside the door. "The strongest, sizzle, sizzle, what's that sound?" Zhang Zha clutched his throbbing head, sadly discovering that the lolly's voice in the room had taken on a hint of allure. After a brief pause, the voice in Zhang Zha's mind finally became clear, then indifferently said, "The strongest cuckold system activated, please check, host." Inside the room, John's benevolent face felt the name of the system, and his vision went black. He knew that other emotions had also played a role in the creation process just now. With a successful binding of the system, John's benevolent face seemed to feel the other emotions' frantic mockery. As if his benevolent face's original intention was good, but his body had malfunctioned. Under this blow, John's rationality completely prevailed, suppressing all the emotions in his mind. John, now back to normal, looked at the 4 women in front of him, hesitated for a moment, and continued his work. Chapter 185 Don't disturb them. At this moment, within the plaza of the main god space. Inside the room, John's consciousness regained its balance, yet he continued his relentless assault, the expressions of the 4 women before him growing increasingly radiant. Outside the room, Zhang Zha lay in agony at the doorway, the side effects of the second-tier gene lock causing him to curl up in pain. But what tormented him most was the faint screams of Lolly coming from inside. His creation of a human seemed to be getting used to and even enjoying the process. How could this be? Lolly couldn't be that kind of person. Zhang Zha shook his head repeatedly, finally managing to shout with difficulty towards the light sphere, "Main god, repair my body, deduct the reward points from myself." The next moment, the main god's light sphere emitted a soft glow, gradually alleviating the side effects of Zhang Zha's gene lock. However, as the physical pain subsided, the agony of being betrayed and having his love stolen intensified. "The strongest cuckold system has been activated, please check, host." A cold, mechanical voice rang in Zhang Zha's mind, causing him to pause in surprise. It's actually true. And what kind of lousy name is this? Zhang Zha was burning with rage. Before entering the main god space, he often read online novels and was very clear about the power of systems. Basically, as long as you have a system, you're the absolute protagonist among protagonists, and you'll quickly get your revenge. The problem is, this system's name is disgusting. Is he, the protagonist, the master of the victim? It feels like the existence of this system is the ultimate insult to his awakened spirit. It's very simple. This system is designed specifically for cuckolds. All you need to do is wear a green hat to become stronger. The more elaborate the methods, the stronger you become. As long as you're thoroughly cuckolded, you can ascend to immortality and become a Buddha within a day. The system's cold, mechanical voice rang in Zhang Zha's mind. Listening to the system's description, Zhang Zha felt his blood pressure rise wildly. That's right, your current strategy is quite good. This first wave alone will make you more than 1,000 times stronger. I have to say, this is an unprecedentedly good start. You're a genius when it comes to becoming stronger. No one else can compare to you. The system's cold voice added fuel to the fire. Stop talking. Zhang Zha roared, feeling like his head had turned green. Then, host, would you like to open the system panel to check your cuckold points? The system asked again. Zhang Zha roared, unable to bear it any longer. Don't mention those two words in front of me again. Okay, host, to ensure the silencing is accurate, please tell me which two words, the system asked very patiently. Zhang Zha's face turned red, feeling like the blood in his veins was about to gush out, and he forced out through his gums, green. Hat. Understood, I won't mention the word green in front of you again. The system very tactfully censored those two words. Then, would you like to open the system panel to check your cuckold points? Check. The next moment, a light green virtual panel immediately appeared in front of Zhang Zha's super cuckold system name, Zhang Zha's strength. 75 plus speed. 74 plus spirit. 63 plus current partner, lolly, negative value. 21, cuckold points. 1,145,148 achievements unlocked, anal position, old man's cuckold, guanine cuckold. Below the spirit indicator was a constantly rising number of points. Zhang Zha, his face grim, pointed at the fluctuating data and demanded, how do I use these points? And why do they keep increasing? The system replied calmly, oh, 1 point can be exchanged for 1 attribute point. The reason it keeps rising is because your partner hasn't stopped yet. As for the achievements below, they're actually related to your partner. No need to explain, I understand. Zhang Zha's face was as black as a pot. Every time your partner unlocks a new achievement, she gains a massive amount of points. And if your negative value reaches 100 points, and she fully awakens, she will sever her relationship with you, achieving the highest achievement, and your points will multiply 100-fold. Looking at the 5 or 6 achievements lit up, Zhang Zha's heart felt like it was bleeding. It hurt so much. Especially seeing that in the few minutes he had chatted with his system, Lolly's corruption value had increased by 1 point, accompanied by increasingly louder noises in the room. System, evenly increase all the points to the 3 attributes. Amidst the background music in the room, Zhang Zha vowed that he would not rest until he avenged this. The next moment, a large number of points increased on Zhang Zha, with all 3 of his stats soaring to over 400,000 to 500,000. An extremely powerful aura burst forth from his body. At this moment, Zhang Zha even had the illusion that if he wanted to, he could tear everything apart. This exhilarating feeling of advancing in biological power was simply the most wonderful thing in the world, even more intense than when he lost Lolly and fell into depravity, using heroin. System, the panel is open again, Zhang Zha said coldly. Super system, name, Zhang Zha strength. 471,415 speed. 471,415 spirit. 471,415 current partner, lolly, negative value. 24 points. 22,356, new, achievements unlocked, rear position, old man, guanine. Actually, being cuckolded by an ordinary person only increases your points by tens to hundreds. Even with advanced gameplay like multi-person or bestiality, reaching this number would take months. It's just that the person who cuckolded you this time has a very, very high status, hence the massive amount of points. The system said, although I don't know what happened, host, your plan is truly brilliant. As a rational suggestion, if you have a new partner in the future, let her interact with this character more. Hearing the system's words, Zhang Zha's breath hitched. The domineering aura of increased strength vanished, replaced by anger. This wasn't his plan at all. If he wanted, he wouldn't have given away Lolly so easily. Perhaps because the system had already hurt him so much, Zhang Zha's anger, though present, wasn't as uncontrollable as before. But what followed was a deep-seated hatred for John. He would take revenge no matter what. That night, Zhang Zha sat outside John's door for hours. During those hours, his super systems points increased throughout the night, and he watched as Laurie's corruption value rose from 24 to 47. Pain and anger swept through his heart, and as his power increased, his murderous intent towards John grew stronger. Finally, after 10 hours, as the sounds inside the house gradually subsided, with a final, loud bang, the corruption points jumped to 50, and the door was finally opened. "Don't disturb them, they're sleeping now," John said calmly to Zhang Zha as he opened the door. Chapter 186 1000 more times. Don't disturb them, they're sleeping. As the door opened, John glanced calmly at Zhang Zha and instructed him. With John's utterly calm yet chilling words, Zhang Zha, who had thought he was already quite patient, could no longer bear it. "Get out of my way." The tens of thousands of times his three-dimensional attributes, gained through exchanging points, erupted completely at this moment, unleashing a power powerful enough to level a street from his fist. Looking at Zhang Zha, who was tens of thousands of times stronger than half a day ago, John truly felt he had worked too hard. In a way, Zhang Zha's increased strength was thanks to him. Tonight was practically guaranteed. After all, he had been selfless. Without John's hundreds of thousands of points of cultivation on Lolly, Zhang Zha wouldn't have gained his current strength. Thinking this, he gently placed his palm on the predetermined path. Boom! The violent collision of fist and palm resounded, the resulting powerful gust of wind carving a huge crater tens of meters deep into the ground beneath Zhang Zha's feet, while the spot where John stood remained completely unscathed. "Had enough fun?" John said, releasing Zhang Zha's fist, then flicking his forehead with his right hand. It was like soothing a child, causing no unnecessary damage, simply sending him flying several meters away. Zhang Zha tried to get up, but John's mental energy easily swept over him, instantly controlling his fragile mind and suppressing him to the ground. "Don't worry, this mental suppression will automatically dissipate after 3 days, or rather, if your mental strength doubles, you can withstand it." John's expression was like that of a high and mighty god as he glanced at Zhang Zha, who was struggling and gritting his teeth but whose body he could control, and then uttered these words. "Automatically dissipate after 3 days? Or rather, if your mental strength doubles." Zhang Zha silently recited this condition in his mind, his bloodshot eyes staring at John as he questioned, "Why? Why did you attack Lolly? Why?" John paused for a moment, then said indifferently, "There aren't that many reasons for doing things. If you like someone, you just do it." John changed the subject, "But if I had to give a reason, there is one. That is, doing your creation would make me feel guilty, and guilt not doing it. Doing Lolly would make him feel guilty? What kind of bullshit logic is that?" At this moment, Zhang Zha's rationality completely collapsed, and he roared, "Ah! I'll kill you. I will definitely kill you. Well, I'll give you this chance. Good luck. Also, I've touched Lolly. Although she's your creation, I still hope that the two of you can stop contacting each other," John said, walking towards the sphere of light. Hearing Zhang Zha's roar behind him, he recalled the reason he chose Lolly in the first place. In order to suppress his good intentions, he had no choice but to engage in dual cultivation with multiple people, using Sessa to beat up the good face until the good face was completely beaten to its knees in surrender. Initially, his targets were only Zanlan, Ming Yanwei, and Zhao Yingguang. Even in the past, he wouldn't have acted against others for no reason, and these three should have been enough to make him feel guilty for a long time. However, when choosing, he remembered Zhang Zha's murderous intent earlier. Hey, what a coincidence. They were on the way anyway, so he might as well bring them all. 3 or 4 wouldn't make much difference. Then the following happened. John was both guilty and delighted to discover that compared to Zanlan, Ming Yanwei, and Zhao Yingguang, Lolly made him feel the most guilty. So he had no choice but to go for it. To recover his mental state as soon as possible, he had to spend more time with this girl who made him feel so guilty, which caused Zhang Zha's points to skyrocket. "God, send me to the world of Final Destination, and adjust the number of days I live to the maximum based on my reward points," John said calmly. In the blink of an eye, he found himself in the boundless vacuum of space. Looking at the vanished Earth, John held a shimmering green gem in his hand. He snapped his fingers, and time in the entire universe instantly rewound to the moment before he threw his punch. Ironically, When John's mind was filled with good intentions, his act of rebellion had caused the destruction before him. But now, with his good intentions suppressed and his mind returning to normal, he had, for his own pleasure, restored everything that had been destroyed. Standing on the restored moon, looking at the magnificent planet before him, John sighed softly. The path of the genetic lock was ruined. Activating the fourth-tier initial genetic lock had caused a super multidimensional level of mental influence. Fortunately, it was deactivated early, or he would have truly become a good person forever. Of course, while their wills were influencing him, John, with his mere strength in understanding the universe's structure, glimpsed a sliver of each of those countless multidimensional superhumans' understanding of the world. In the worldviews of cultivation novels, this difference could be understood as a nascent soul cultivator briefly merging their spirit with countless heavenly deos for a fleeting moment. Furthermore, after merging with a deo, he wasn't replaced by the supreme forgetfulness. Instead, he gained insights into the various realms of rules within the heavenly deo. Compared to the original path of the gene lock, John felt this knowledge was far more precious. Although there was no change in strength at present, a little consolidation would allow for a qualitative leap. Sitting cross-legged on the moon, John looked at the shimmering green gem in his hand, held it again, closed his eyes, and sensed the rules within. Past, present, future, the eternal motion of matter, the continuity and sequence of change, abstract time, as the fourth dimension beyond the three. Several dozen days later, John frowned and withdrew from his state of perception. No, with my current knowledge system, I can't achieve the result I want to achieve, the gap is too large. John looked at the glowing time gem in his hand. Perhaps I should unlock the fourth-order gene lock again and extract more knowledge from those superhuman wills. No, once might not be enough, John thought to himself, struggling with his next crazy idea. With the experience from the first time, this time, as long as I'm well prepared, I should be able to smoothly transition to the fourth-tier gene lock. It just might be a bit tough on Zhao Yingkong and the others, John thought to himself. Just thinking about it made him feel incredibly guilty. He was sure he could suppress his goodwill when the time came. The only question now was, how many times would he have to go through this knowledge plundering? 10 times? 100 times? Or 1,000 times? Or even more? Damn, the last chapter was blocked, it was just released. Remember to go back and read it. Chapter 187 Playing with Others at Will. Within the god's space, a long, narrow spatial rift, over 3 meters long, was torn open in what was once a stable environment. John stood on the lunar surface, still some distance from the god's teleportation time. However, he had already completed all his plans in this world, so without waiting for the god's teleportation, he directly created a spatial rift and returned on his own. Waving his hand to restore the space, John ignored Zhang Zha, who was still mentally suppressed by him, and headed towards his room under Zhang Zha's murderous gaze. Opening the door, he saw Zhao Yingkong, who had recovered her best physique, her face flushed, her alluring eyes fixed on him, her inner thighs slightly rubbing together. The meaning was clear. Snap. John lightly snapped his fingers. The next moment, Zhao Yingkong's body trembled violently, and her consciousness returned to the level it had been 2 days prior. Her previously alluring eyes instantly blazed with a fierce fire. At this moment, she clearly remembered everything John had done to her over the past 2 days. Even more infuriating was that although John restored her mind to normal, his altered sensitivity hadn't been reset. More than 3 times more sensitive, even the slightest friction between her clothes and skin caused her to tremble. What exactly do you want? What do you take me for? Zhao Yingkong, burning with rage, angrily questioned the man before her. To alter her and then revert to her original state, was this just wanton manipulation? Take me for what? John sat calmly across from Zhao Yingkong, puzzled. An enemy, a slave, a prisoner. What else did you think? An enemy. Zhao Yingkong suddenly remembered that she had tried to assassinate him. This was simply the consequence of a failed assassination attempt. Complaining was pointless. Even knowing all this, looking at the man who had taken her innocence, Zhao Yingkong still couldn't suppress the raging fire within her. The commotion from their confrontation also awakened the women who had fallen asleep from exhaustion nearby. As they awoke, they immediately realized what had happened. Zanlan and Ming Yanwei, wrapped in their blankets, shed tears. Although they had been battered all night, under John's protection, their bodies weren't particularly exhausted, their mental anguish was far greater. Pervert. How dare you? Lori, wrapped in her blanket, couldn't utter the word, only angrily waving her hand at John. But John merely glanced at her, instantly freezing her pale hand in place. Right now, if I wanted, I could wipe out the entire solar system with a snap of my fingers. And your spirits, wills, dreams, and perseverance, I can manipulate them at will. John calmly stated, everything you have is nothing but a toy before me. Don't bother with pointless resistance. Then what were you doing just now? Minyanwa sneered, a so-called god, unable to even control his lower body, wantonly insulting us. Utterly despicable. Minyanwa's expression was utterly disdainful, but the two tear tracks at the corners of her eyes proved that her heart was far from calm. You're wrong, John said, looking at her. It's precisely because I've controlled my lower body that I'm doing this, and I'll continue to treat you like this. As for the time and frequency, I don't know. It might be once, or it might be 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times. Anyway, you need to fully cooperate with me until I achieve my goal, John said. As for the specifics and why you should cooperate, John had no intention of explaining. Under the angry gazes of the group, John nodded in satisfaction, estimated the time, and said, you can rest in the room for 5 hours first, and then, just enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. The group gritted their teeth and glared at John, never having hated anyone so much. Do you think being forced is a comfortable thing? What else? John retorted. Forced and comfortable are not contradictory. Is it wrong for a murderer to say 1 + 1 = 2? Do you want me to show you the previous videos? For example, you were quite flirtatious. John pointed at Zonlan, but was immediately interrupted by her blushing. Zonlan blushed. You recorded it? No, but it's possible, John said. It's just a matter of a thought if I want to. With that, John snapped his fingers, allowing the restrained Lolly to regain control of her body. You pervert, slut, rapist. Lolly pointed at John's nose and cursed. I think you should be more demure, John said, snapping his fingers again in front of her. This time, the snap wasn't to immobilize her, but... Lolly's previously fierce expression turned pale under John's snap, her eyes rolling upwards before she collapsed onto the bed, her delicate toes twitching and spasming uncontrollably. What did you do? Zonlan asked, embracing Lolly with concern. It's just stuffing a portion of last night's feelings into her brain. John looked at the men with satisfaction, their anger barely contained. Very good. I really like how you all want to kill me but can't. Keep it up. That'll fill me with guilt. John laughed. It seemed these few were enough, there was no need to harm anymore. You guys should rest now. At least for the next 8 days, until the next horror movie, you won't be leaving this room. After a day and a night of suppression, Zhang Zha broke free from the mental control that was supposed to suppress him for 3 whole days. As mentioned before, John's mental control either suppressed him for 3 days or doubled his mental strength. Feeling his 3-dimensional attributes double again, Zhang Zha understood what was happening inside the tightly closed room. Zhang Zha's teeth were grinding together, he wanted nothing more than to rush into the room and kill John, but reality was so cruel. He wasn't even 1 in a billion of John's power. He could only writhe in agonizing, impotent rage outside. John's room remained closed for 8 days. During this time, the other members of the Central Continent team, fearing trouble, all stayed inside, rarely coming out to communicate, afraid of incurring the wrath of Zhang Zha and John. Thus, their 10-day rest period in the main god space came to an end, and despite their trepidation, everyone had no choice but to emerge from their rooms. Chapter 188 Star River Team. On the plaza, the members of the Central Continent team gathered, looking at the few missing members and then at Zhang Zha's dark face, unsure what to say. This time, John didn't linger long. With a creak, he slowly pushed open the door and walked out, immediately drawing everyone's attention. Your Majesty, Li Ziwei called out first, followed by the others. John nodded slowly and said, who among you wants to go back? Go back? Everyone was taken aback. Yes, if anyone wants to return to reality, I can help them remove their wristwatch, John said. Upon hearing that they could go back, several members of the Central Continent team's eyes lit up immediately, and they raised their hands, saying, Your Majesty, I want to go back now. In the main god space, they had heard Mu Gang and the others mention things about the real world. Compared to working themselves to the bone here, It would be better to take their children back and live out their retirement. For a moment, most people raised their hands. Only Chu Zhuan, Zheng Zha, and Li Xiaoi stayed behind for different reasons. Looking at the 12 people with their hands raised, John repeated, "Anyone else want to go back?" 3 seconds later, seeing no one raise their hands, John directly ripped apart their reincarnation wristbands, throwing them and their creations out of the god's space. After doing all this, John looked at the women behind him who were dressed and said, "Hurry up and come out, the god's game is about to begin." As John spoke, the women, their faces flushed and full of energy after 8 days and 8 nights of continuous work, walked out of the room somewhat awkwardly. When Zheng Zha saw a cute girl walk out, he couldn't help but call out, "Lolly, are you alright?" But before he could finish speaking, Zheng Zha froze. Lolly was not only alright, she was in excellent condition, with a rosy complexion and good spirits, as if she had just woken up from a good night's sleep. However, through the super system, Zheng Zha had seen his points steadily increasing just 3 minutes ago, and Lolly's corruption value had reached a new high of 92. Under Zheng Zha's gaze, Lori, sensing something, turned and glanced at him, her eyes filled with undisguised guilt. Then, under his glaring gaze, she quietly hid behind. "John?" Zheng Zha wanted to say something, but the next moment, a gentle glance from John made him instantly stiffen and unable to move. Just as John had said, now that he had thoroughly studied the rules within the 6 Infinity Stones, he was essentially a god among men. Except for those with excessively overpowered or abilities, most people were truly at his mercy, both physically and mentally. Now, if he wanted, Zheng Zha's mind could be influenced by him to accept the fact that Lori was being manipulated, and a sincere smile would spread across his face as he said, "Tonight's settled." However, John usually wouldn't do this. It was precisely because it was somewhat enjoyable that he didn't find the process boring, just as he was currently enduring Zheng Zha's disrespect. Enter the Pillar of Light within 30 seconds, target locked, Starship Troopers, initiate transmission. The solemn voice of the Supreme God echoed across the plaza, followed by 20 pillars of light descending from the sky. "Let's go, don't waste time." John walked into one of the pillars of light, with Lori obediently following beside him, both squeezing into the pillar. This guy actually brought Lori into the horror movie too, does he want to? Zheng Zha gritted his teeth, watching helplessly as Lori obediently grabbed John's hand, and then, under his control, slowly walked towards the pillar of light. After everyone was inside, with a flash of light, they were transported into the movie world. Accompanied by that familiar half-dreaming, half-awake state, after his strength was enhanced by points, his consciousness quickly cleared, and he jumped up, discovering that apart from the old man, there wasn't a single newcomer present. Teams Demon, Nan Yan's Hao, and Sen's Hao have entered the Star River Squad World 1. Killing an enemy team member whose gene lock hasn't been activated will grant 2,000 reward points and 1 C-level side quest. Killing an enemy team member whose gene lock has been activated will grant 7,000 reward points and 1 B-level side quest. For each member of your team killed, you will receive -1 point. Killing an enemy member will grant +1 point. The final number multiplied by 2,000 will be the reward points for the remaining members of both teams. The cold and solemn voice of the Supreme God resounded in everyone's ears. At the same time, everyone looked at their wristwatches, which displayed the main quest, survive for 20 days. For every 1,000 insects killed, you will receive 1 reward point. For every 100 flying insects killed, you will receive 1 reward point. For every laser insect killed, you will receive 1 reward point. For every fire-breathing insect killed, you will receive 10 reward points. Your Majesty, what should we do now? Li Xiaoi asked excitedly, are you going to wipe out the entire enemy team? No need. John thought of himself in the demon team. It seemed his clone had also arrived in this world. He thought to himself, I'm tired of the God realm. I've already gotten what I wanted, and the reward points are useless to me now. After this horror movie ends and I achieve my goal, I'll leave. Not killing? Then what are we going to do next? Li Xiaoi asked persistently. To destroy the entire Zerg. John glanced at him indifferently. Wait for me. I'm going to rule the entire Human Federation. Rule the Human Federation. Li Xiaoi's face twitched. After learning that this movie was Starship Troopers, he had watched both the movie and the game. The entire Earth Federation had developed a light-speed engine, its territory covering the solar system and radiating outwards, a distance of at least several light years. But in the next moment, John's spirit, through spatial abilities, traversed countless light years, covering the entire solar system. Then, John's image was transmitted to the minds of every life form within the entire solar system. In their minds, John, with a cold expression like a high and mighty God, simultaneously rang out in their minds with an incomparably majestic voice, "Submit or die." At this moment, whether human or insectoid, any living being could hear the sound. And any being with normal thinking could understand the content of the sound, followed by a compressed message exploding in their minds. Ha ha ha. On a certain spaceship, a boy exactly like John, embracing a beautiful woman, laughed, "My true form has finally arrived." Chapter 189: The Extinction of a Star. What happened? The Earth Federation listened in astonishment as the boy in their mind spoke to them in a cold voice. A deluge of information exploded in their minds. John's icy voice echoed, "Think carefully, I've implanted everything into your minds." Implanted into your minds, everyone thought, subconsciously recalling the content based on the voice. Sure enough, there were more memories, about domination and enslavement. Their world was derived from a movie called Starship Troopers, and this boy was the emperor ruling another universe, now about to liberate this ignorant and rigid one. Now, as long as they submitted to him, there was no need for confusion or fear. They only needed to prostrate themselves at the boy's feet and wholeheartedly follow his footsteps to conquer the heavens. And at this moment, under the boy's mental control, the entire human federation could hear this message. After receiving the message, a 30-second countdown appeared before the eyes of hundreds of billions of people in the solar system. Only 2 chances. Do you want to accept the rule of the Earth Federation, yes or no? Below this option was a progress bar, showing the percentage of people who chose different options. How is this possible? The high-ranking officials of the Human Federation were the first to vehemently object. The Human Federation can never merge with the Earth Federation. With this declaration, these officials were the first to press the virtual no button. Following them, most people pressed no without hesitation, with only a few pressing yes with slight worry. Soon, the percentage of those pressing no reached 87%, creating an overwhelming majority. As the 30-second countdown ended, everyone waited anxiously for the boy's next words. The next moment, a line of large characters appeared before everyone's minds, and everyone could understand its meaning. Well, expecting humanity to remain rational forever is indeed a luxury. This was also within my expectations. The first opportunity has been used up. Please enjoy the next 365 days. I will return then. The 2 lines of text appeared for only 30 seconds before quietly disappearing. Has he left? Looking at the disappearing text, someone couldn't help but ask. Because the choice had happened so quickly, some even felt it was all a dream. A person beside him nodded and laughed. Haha, this Earth Federation Emperor is nothing special. As long as we work hard with sincerity, we can definitely overcome the difficulties. We've won. A large number of civilians from the Human Federation cheered. Meanwhile, the Federation's high-ranking officials prepared to hold an emergency meeting to discuss the Starship Troopers and the mind control. After all, the Starship Troopers plot that had appeared in their minds was practically a foreshadowing of many things in the past and future of this universe, which was truly astonishing. But before these people could gather, the advance team near the sun discovered an astonishing scene. The sun that had been burning fiercely for 4.5 billion years suddenly went out without any warning. It was a silent shock. 1 second the light was enough to blind a person, but the next moment they were plunged into eternal darkness. In fact, because it went out so quickly, these people didn't realize what had happened for the first few minutes, but they soon noticed it through monitoring the sun. The flames spewing from the huge yellow star in front of them were easily extinguished by an invisible hand, like tiny flames, which was utterly absurd. What? You said the sun went out? Several minutes later, the high-ranking officials of the Human Federation heard the news. They instinctively looked up at space, but the sky was still clear, and the sun was still high in the sky. They thought it was a false alarm. But they overlooked the fact that even light takes 8 minutes to travel from Earth to the sun. The next moment, as the stars extinguished, the last rays of sunlight fell on the Earth's surface, and then the entire Earth, both the northern and southern hemispheres, simultaneously fell into darkness. The arrival of night was instantaneous, like turning off the lights at night. There wasn't even a snap, and it was dark. Even the moonlight, which comes from the moon reflecting the sun, was invisible to them. Looking around, They could only see a sky full of brilliant stars, the result of the burning of other galaxies and superclusters billions of years ago. That being extinguished the sun. At this moment, everyone finally realized the seriousness of the problem, but unfortunately, the problem was far more serious than they thought. No one knew that throughout the entire Milky Way galaxy, under John's control, more than 200 billion stars had simultaneously gone out in an instant. The news transmitted back by the spaceships that relied on nuclear fusion for travel was even more shocking. According to their intelligence, it wasn't just a simple matter of the sun going out. The nuclear fusion reactors they used to support their travels also failed to ignite. In the video, a scientist in a white lab coat said solemnly, "It's obvious that the fundamental parameters of the entire solar system have been altered by that entity. Physics has completely ceased to exist. If any nuclear fusion device, including the sun, can no longer ignite, what kind of accidents will occur?" a high-ranking official from the Human Federation asked. "Without sunlight, the Earth will experience a drastic temperature drop in a single day. A week later, global temperatures will plummet to at least -100 degrees Celsius, and most edible crops on land will die en masse. Just from the temperature drop and lack of food, over 90% of the hundreds of billions of people in the Human Federation will perish within the next 6 months. Simultaneously, because nuclear fusion will be unusable, those light-speed spaceships floating in space on missions will become coffins in space. But even so, there is still hope. We can use nuclear fission devices to build power plants, preventing humanity from complete extinction. However, if that entity completely alters even the parameters of nuclear fission, relying solely on ancient methods for power generation, humanity will not survive for more than 6 months." As the scientist spoke, everyone's hearts sank. A leader tried to issue an order, but found the screen in front of him immediately shut down. Since the nuclear fusion device was created, the Human Federation had relied heavily on it for energy. Now, with the energy source shut down, it was a miracle that the remaining energy had lasted this long. Soon, as the nuclear fusion device lost power, the entire Federation of Humanity fell into a period of great silence. All signals that relied on energy disappeared. Only then did these people realize how fragile their supposedly powerful technological strength was. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190 Memory Rollback. On the 300th day after the Great Silence in the Human Federation calendar, over 97% of the hundreds of billions of people in the entire galaxy were wiped out. With communication lost, the ability to quickly organize and mobilize via the network vanished, and widespread panic ensued. Although most people didn't know the specifics of what had happened, they knew it was definitely related to the mysterious entity speaking in their minds. Soon, the entire human society descended into violent chaos within the silence. Scenes of murder, rape, robbery, deception, betrayal, and cannibalism played out in every inhabited territory. The once perfectly constructed civilized society was brutally stripped bare by John, and in the struggle for survival, the ugliness and brilliance of humanity were on full display. For even the smallest amount of resources, brothers would turn against each other, and fathers and sons would kill each other. But at the same time, the power of religion once again gained the upper hand, and suddenly, claims of divine punishment, divine retribution, and karmic retribution raged. Missionaries declared that this punishment was due to disobeying God's choice, a great flood of the new world. Everyone readily believed this claim, for it was indeed true. If the boy was a god, then they were being punished for abandoning divine salvation. Meanwhile, aboard the spaceship, Li Xiaoyi asked John, "Your Majesty, are you really not going to intervene? We agreed to rule the Human Federation, but at this rate, humanity will be completely wiped out. There are still over 60 days left. I said I'd give them a year to enjoy themselves, so let them enjoy a year of bliss," John said calmly. "You've been here doing nothing, playing around for almost a year, what more could you want?" Li Xiaoyi smiled awkwardly. The main god's mission was supposed to be survival for only 20-odd days, but it's taken so long without summoning us back. I'm starting to miss my human creation. While the two were talking, Zhang Zha was currently engaged in a frenzied battle among the Zerg. Looking at the points on his strongest system, which hadn't changed for over 300 days, Zhang Zha couldn't suppress his doubts. At this moment, Lolly's corruption value also remained unchanged, at 92, the same as when she first entered this world, indicating that John had indeed done nothing to Lolly during this time. But if he wasn't going to do anything, why did John bring the main god space here? Was it just to undermine him? Although he didn't know what was going on, the fact that the points hadn't changed was still incredibly comforting for Zhang Zha. Lori hadn't completely betrayed him, perhaps that was the greatest consolation. Returning to his room from the main cabin, John looked at the women before him, each with a different temperament but all stunningly beautiful. John asked, "Anyone want to sleep with me tonight? If you don't need my help, I'll turn off the lights and go to sleep." Looking at John's gentlemanly demeanor, even after more than 300 days, the women still hadn't gotten used to it. What was going on? Back in the main god space, he was like a tireless stallion, but here he was so refined. Even if they refused, he no longer forced them. Unfortunately, in the main god space, their bodies had already succumbed to the temptations of 8 days and 8 nights of sexual activity. Just seeing John standing before them, under the influence of their own psychology, made their legs go weak, and they couldn't help but make demands. Even if John didn't force them, they would still feel incredibly ashamed and couldn't help but cling to him. Sometimes they would ask John afterward why he changed, only to be told, "If I were to sleep with you now, there would be no experience to gain, so it doesn't matter." At that moment, as John asked this question, Zhao Yingquan snapped off the lights, and then 4 figures, enduring shame, slowly pressed themselves against him. On the 365th day of the Great Silence, 99% of the total population of the Human Federation had disappeared. The few survivors relied solely on John's existence, hoping he would return a year later to save them. Yes, save them. Compared to death, they desperately wanted John's rule. Finally, after endless torment, the clock struck 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds on the 365th day. The next moment, everything in the world completely stopped. Everyone was stunned to see their bodies begin to regress under their own power, or rather, time began to flow backward. Everyone could only witness all of this from a third-person perspective, looking at everything they had done in the past year. This was perhaps the power of God. Everyone stared in awe at the silent scenes unfolding before them. As time reversed, not only those in the present watched, but even those who had died in the past regained consciousness, clearly remembering the scene before their deaths. Soon, the reversal of time accelerated. 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month. Finally, the reversal reached a year earlier. Before anyone could react, an extremely authoritative voice resounded in their minds: "Submit or die. Only one chance left. Do you accept the rule of the Earth Federation? Yes or no?" Looking at the 30-second countdown, everyone felt as if in a dream. Faced with a choice, some wept, some cried uncontrollably, some vented their frustrations. But most, before the 30-second countdown, pressed the virtual yes button with trembling hands. After experiencing that incredibly real hell, even if John caused the deaths of their parents, brothers, wives, and children in the future, they had no choice but to choose to be ruled by John. Faced with John's will, everyone clearly understood, even if he killed my father, he killed my mother, I would still vote for him. Soon, the number of people voting in favor exceeded 99%. After the vote was completed, the brains of all those who voted against or did not vote were instantly exploded by an invisible force, blood splattering everywhere. Just as John said, he gave them 2 chances. If they didn't seize them, they couldn't blame him. Li Xiaoyi looked at John in a daze and said, "So, the chances of the previous year were all fake?" "They could be real," John said with a smile. "I just picked out a timeline that might happen in the future and made everyone's memories roll back to the present. But since these people chose to submit, that timeline has been discarded by me." John said, "Very good, this time a new record has been set again, ruling the world's humanity in 30 seconds. Just as the two were exchanging words, Zhang Zha watched in despair as the system, which had been silent until now, jumped from 92 to 100 points in Lolly's corruption value, achieving the all-position completion achievement. This also meant that Lolly was now completely in John's shape. Chapter 191. Can't you put up a fight? Completely abandon that timeline? Faced with John's answer, Li Xiaoyi was completely dumbfounded. It sounded incredibly sophisticated. John merely smiled at Li Xiao's confusion, too lazy to explain. After deciphering the time stone, he could now see multiple future timelines within a limited range with his own eyes. He could also choose what to do in the present based on the future he saw. For example, the memories he just rewound. If the people of the Human Federation didn't know their place, then abandoning the future would become a hellish present. As the two were talking, the members of the Central Continent team all stared at John in horror. Wasn't this ability to pull future memories into the present a kind of rebirth? Zhang Zha looked at the fallen lolly and thought of the time stone he had given John when he was a delivery man. It was probably the effect of that stone that gave John this ability. But what Zhang Zha didn't know at the moment was that the 6 stones were no longer on John. After analyzing the underlying rules of the stones, he had sent all 6 stones back to reality. As they exchanged their words, the alloy hatch hissed open, and the original captain and crew of the spaceship stood respectfully at the door, awaiting John's words. In the future, he would naturally need servants to attend to him. Therefore, everyone on this spaceship was under his subconscious control, serving him and becoming one of the few survivors a year later. Although these people had been freed from the mental suggestion, they clearly saw the future a year from now and dared not harbor any thoughts of resistance, continuing to drift along and feign loyalty. You all prepare yourselves. There's no need to wait for the Human Federation government to send people to pick us up, just return to Earth, John instructed. Just now, he had sent his location information to the minds of those higher-ranking officials. Soon, the Earth Federation, which had been brought under his control, would definitely send a fleet to pick him up, but that would take too long. However, in the vastness of space, waiting for those people to arrive and return would have already exceeded the 20 days limit set by the main god, so it was better to go back himself. Yes, Your Majesty, the captain replied respectfully. With the light-speed engine's capabilities, it's estimated that it will take about 13 days to return to Earth headquarters from here. If you can't do it, just open a special portal back. Zhao Yingguang scoffed from the side. After a year of mental manipulation, her hostility towards John had completely dissipated. It was just her personality. She couldn't bring herself to say anything conciliatory. I can definitely do it, but there are still 13 days left. I have another task to assign, John said, looking at the women. That is to complete the unfinished business in the god space. Complete the unfinished business in the god space. A blush crept onto the women's faces, their hearts churning, but none of them showed it. Looking at the women's emotions, John frowned slightly, wondering if the excessive frequency of their encounters had caused them to stop resisting. If these women were compliant, where would his guilt come from? If they were enjoying it, then it wasn't about physical intimacy, but simply a normal male-female relationship. With such hesitation, John, amidst the envious gazes of the Central Plains team and the annoyed stares of Zhang Zha, returned to the private first-class cabin with the women. The subsequent events unfolded exactly as he expected. Forget resistance, if he had been even slightly slow, or even started actively cooperating, they would have practically begging him to hurry up. Could you guys be a little less willing? John asked somewhat helplessly. No, willing? Zanlan looked at John with confusion, not understanding his purpose. Did he like the rebellious kind of thing? XP is quite something. It's just, sigh. John sighed slightly. He had only experienced hundreds of battles consecutively. How could he have been so easily swayed by his own body? Looking at the incredibly compliant women, John stopped, withdrew from the group, and calmly said amidst the women's dissatisfying gazes, I need to think about it. What, has our emperor gotten tired of us? Our bodies no longer meet your requirements? Mingyan what you said with a cold smile, arms crossed. No, you're all fine, John thought to himself, then casually replied, but I need some peace and quiet. I don't think you need peace and quiet, just some trembling is enough. Before the words were even finished, John was once again engulfed by the crowd. 3 hours later, John emerged from the room with an unperturbed expression, leaving the women collapsed on the floor. Perhaps I should just change their minds again, manipulate their spirits at will, and make their memories return to the point when I first forced them, John thought, but then dismissed the idea. If it were an enemy, he wouldn't care, he could manipulate their minds however he wanted. But now that he had slept with these women, the treatment couldn't be the same as for an enemy. At least, John didn't want to arbitrarily manipulate the minds of his own people. It wasn't that he couldn't bear to, but simply that he didn't want to. Since he didn't want to, he wouldn't do it. Upon reaching the main cabin, John, seeing the captain intently maneuvering the spaceship, ordered, "No more sailing. The original plan is changed. Inform the soldiers in the cabin to prepare for an emergency landing." "Yes, Your Majesty," the captain replied without a trace of impatience. "Where do you need to land?" "Earth." John's words were barely out of his mouth when the entire spaceship vanished into space, reappearing 15 days later, having landed on Earth's surface. The moment they touched down, everyone on the planet heard John's voice in their minds, "On Earth. Prepare to receive us." With this message, humanity across Earth sprang into action. Because they hadn't expected John to arrive so quickly, many planned preparations hadn't been completed, forcing them to rush here. The first to arrive was the Earth fleet. John and his crew, having finished preparing, opened the hatch to find a vast fleet of light-speed starships sailing through the night sky. The plumes of smoke trailed across the night sky like a meteor shower before rapidly coming to a stop before them. Compared to the tiny figures of the group, the thousands of ships before them were an absolute behemoth, a true interstellar spectacle. Yet, none of them felt a ripple of emotion, for a miracle was unfolding right beside them. Chapter 192. They're all just toys. Everyone around John knew that despite the imposing appearance of the fleet before them, they were utterly useless in John's eyes. This was evidenced in the memories of the future timeline. After altering the underlying physical parameters of the entire galaxy, these massive interstellar fleets had all been reduced to coffins in space. The soldiers and officers within, lacking supplies and resupply, would slowly dwindle to death. The leading hatch opened, and an elderly man in a suit and tie, without the slightest hesitation, quickly descended the steps and respectfully said, "Your Majesty the Emperor of the Earth Federation, your loyal subject has come to pay homage." John nodded slightly. He naturally recognized the man before him. He had immediately rejected the offer during the previous selection process. "I need the Human Federation to provide me with 10,000 beautiful women," John said, looking at the old man. This was the first order he had issued since taking control of this civilization, demanding 10,000 beautiful women from the Earth Federation, a nation of hundreds of billions. The old man hesitated for a moment, then agreed without hesitation, "No problem. Your Majesty, besides the condition of beautiful women, are there any other requirements?" "I need them all to be virgins," John thought to himself, "under 30 years old, and preferably harboring a considerable degree of resentment towards me." "We will certainly meet your requirements," the old man said respectfully. Although John's conditions were strange, the Human Federation in this universe had a population of hundreds of billions, roughly 1 in 10 million. As long as they were willing to search, they could definitely complete the mission. "That's settled then. I will be conducting some experiments in the human settlements. You don't need to panic. Your Majesty, your lodgings have been arranged. Would you like to go now?" "No need." John shook his head slightly, waved to the right, and with molecular reconstruction, a sprawling courtyard covering thousands of acres immediately appeared on the barren mountain beside him. Looking at the surprised old man, John said, "Just bring all the women and corresponding supplies here. You can leave now." After saying that, John turned around and led the Central Continent team back to the courtyard. "Your Majesty," Zhang Zha, Li Xiaoyi said awkwardly. The spaceship had just landed, and Zhang Zha had already disappeared. With his current strength, he couldn't stop him even if he wanted to. "Don't worry about him, he won't affect us." John turned around and chose an elegant courtyard to go inside. The women who had finished getting ready followed him. As soon as they entered, Zhao Yingquang glared at John angrily and said, "What do you mean? 1,000 women, aren't you afraid of choking to death? Watch your attitude." John glanced at her lightly, and Zhao Yingquang instantly collapsed to the ground, as if she had been working continuously for 24 hours. "Please understand your place," John said, looking at the women. "Upgrading you from toys to playmates is already a great favor. Given the shallowness of our relationship, I've been quite tolerant of you. Please don't forcefully interfere with my decisions. When I stated my decision to do this, it meant it was a well-considered conclusion. Perhaps someone could interfere or stop me, but certainly not you as you are now. Given the thinness of our relationship, don't expect me to make any more concessions." John's tone was utterly calm, but the women, who had previously been playful and argumentative, were now deathly pale. While John still showed no emotion, This was the first time he had spoken to them with such unquestionable authority. It was at this moment that the women realized the man before them was the Emperor of the Earth Federation, who held the power of life and death over countless people. Previously, due to physical intimacy and their constant gratification from him, coupled with John's indifferent attitude towards everything, they had gradually developed a possessive desire for him, attempting to dominate him. But now they realized that it wasn't them possessing John, but John possessing them. When John didn't like them, he could easily leave them to gather dust in a corner and go after new toys. I'm sorry, Lori apologized, her face pale, then she stepped forward, clutching John's clothes tightly, afraid of being abandoned. John's face lit up with a smile again, and he knelt down to gently help Zhao Yingkong up. It's alright. Although there are more than 10,000 toys now, their status is not as high as yours. You still have a small place in my heart. Now I need to rest for a little while. Can you let me have some peace and quiet? John gently stroked Zhao Yingkong's head. After the women left, the faint smile on John's face immediately turned into a calm, still expression. To suppress his kind side, he had stripped away his emotions too much, and his emotional fluctuations were becoming less and less. Although, rationally speaking, being absolutely rational was the optimal solution, wasn't that just going back to the old ways? John recalled his initial experience with the strongest superhuman system. He'd gone 6 months without sleep, food, or personal entertainment, living like a robot, grinding through missions. It wasn't until Ross's missile made him realize he needed to cherish every day. If he didn't treat himself well now, he might die tomorrow and never have the chance to enjoy it again. Then, one thing after another came his way: Marvel, parallel universes, DC, infinite terror. It never stopped. Gradually, his thinking began to revert to his original self, becoming a machine for getting stronger. He always thought he'd rest after this phase of hard work, but becoming stronger was endless, and enemies kept appearing. When would it end? After this world is finished, I'll take a good rest. I've been working way too hard lately. Maybe I should find a lower-level world to show off and reward myself? John thought. But does this count as setting a flag? Ending his thoughts, John focused on his task. The next moment, his mind connected with the consciousness of all humanity in the solar system. In the blink of an eye, a bright white sphere, as clear as the moon, appeared in everyone's minds. What is this? A white orb of light. Could it be related to His Majesty? That must be it. Did His Majesty's voice echo in everyone's minds before? Feeling the extra orb of light in their minds, everyone began to speculate. Then John's voice rang out again in everyone's minds. Don't panic, this is just a small social experiment. Feel the orb of light in your minds and exchange it for anything you like. As for the price, you can pay with your emotions. Chapter 193. Everyone has a system. Emotions? Sensing the pure white sphere of light in their minds, some subconsciously immersed themselves in it, and soon a long list of exchanges popped up. X. Multiverse Chain Annihilation Device. Through the destruction of a single universe, it causes a chain reaction in surrounding universes. Once activated, the number of universes annihilated will continuously increase, without end. Emotion points. 10 cap 90x rank, Infinity Gauntlet, 6 Primal Stone version. Time, space, spirit, soul, power, and reality are all integrated. With just a snap of the fingers, one can freely manipulate reality or turn multiple universes into dust. Emotional points. 10 cap 90x, Power Stone, one of the accessories on the Infinity Gauntlet. Emotional points. 10 cap 80. SS Tire, Kamar Taj full set of magic, ordinary Superman Bloodline S Tire, Infinite Proliferation Alien Parasite, Apocalypse full set of technology, Krypton full set of technology attire, movie version of the Speed Force, Hulk Serum, Nuclear Fusion Manufacturing Technology B Tire, Hydrogen Bomb, Tire 4 Primary Gene Lock, not guaranteed to pass the Inner Demon Test, C Tire, Abomination Serum, Exoskeleton Armor, full set of Fire Dance Whirlwind Sword Technique, Tire 3 Gene Lock Unlock D Tire, Spider-Man Gene Mutation Bloodline, Advanced Kigging Enhancement, Side Effect Free Lizard Serum Enhancement E Tire. Looking at the seemingly endless exchange list, everyone's heart couldn't help but pound wildly. Because the exchange list in front of them was not just a simple text description, every word carried John's spiritual will. Just by seeing the text description, one could immediately know the effect of exchanging and using the item. Starting from D Tire, Every item was a treasure that could make anyone's heart flutter. So, what about emotional points? Everyone looked to the bottom right corner, each with a pitiful single-digit number of points. As their eyes focused on the emotion points in front of them, another piece of information flooded their minds. Based on the surge of emotion, whether it's happiness, sadness, or pain, any emotion generated earns emotion points. The more intense the emotion, the more points are awarded. Furthermore, if you trigger a strong emotional reaction in others, you gain 1% of their emotion points. So, someone's mind raced, and an idea popped into their head. They immediately ran into the street and shouted, "Everyone look at me! Look at me! Look at me!" The man's shout attracted everyone's attention. He yelled, "I'm a fool." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was stunned, looking at the self-proclaimed genius with confusion, bewilderment, and surprise. But the man ignored them completely, instead looking at his list with delight. His emotion points had jumped from 3 to 11, enough to buy the lowest level F-grade exchange. Good, 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 is that how it works? To verify, the man directly picked out a lighter worth 10 reward points from the exchange list. In an instant, a beautifully crafted lighter appeared out of thin air in front of him. "It's real!" the man exclaimed excitedly, staring at the lighter before taking a big bite to confirm it wasn't an illusion. Seeing the lighter appear out of thin air, the clever ones immediately realized how it was done. A teenager immediately stepped forward and shouted, "My name is Makinki. Do you know how awesome I am? I dare to eat shit. Anyone want to come with me to this Heshuo, a fictional city in Taiwan? I'll put on a show for them." But by now, few people cared about his performance. Everyone was eager to jump in and create their own antics to gain emotional points from others. However, when everyone was focused on creating emotional points, no one paid attention to others' performances, and the entire street descended into chaos. And this kind of thing had appeared in every corner of the Federation. Soon, people discovered that directly harvesting emotions online was the fastest way. As long as a viral moment was created, emotional points would flow in continuously. From then on, celebrities and internet personalities who could manipulate others' emotions became the elite. The humans of the Star River team had truly entered the era of massive antics. On the spaceship, the clone Zheng Zha stared excitedly at the exchange list, saying, "Isn't this a different kind of god? But items above grade C easily cost over 1 million emotion points. It's too difficult. Anyway, you can get emotion points just by doing something funny. With your current strength, doing something funny is easy," said the clone John, who was having a beautiful woman suckle his lip. "Well, I'm okay at fighting, but when it comes to doing funny things..." The clone Zheng Zha gave an awkward smile. "It's simple. What's the hottest topic in the Human Federation right now?" The clone John said, "Of course, it's this exchange list. Isn't this the code to generating traffic? You just need to pretend that your strength is from exchanging, then make a video with a title like, 'Spending 10 million emotion points, how strong am I?' and then perform something like smashing an alloy head, and it'll be a hit. Then, envy and jealousy emotion points will come in endlessly," the clone John suggested, while the clone Zheng Zha's eyes grew brighter and brighter. "Good idea, Your Majesty, I'll take my leave now." The clone Zheng Zha said goodbye and then went off to film the video. Meanwhile, the clone John looked at the exchange list in his mind with some worry. Through a slight mental fluctuation, he quickly deciphered a clue. Damn it, what the original is doing? This isn't collecting emotion points at all, it's using its own emotions to infect hundreds of billions of humans in the entire solar system. With the original's mental strength, just a small portion could instantly turn everyone in this universe into idiots. After understanding the principle, the clone John cursed, "Damn it, is something wrong? Should I run away?" Ignoring the clone John's worries, John was sitting on the bed, his mind radiating across an area several thousand light years in size through spatial folding. Then, through material reconstruction and a biological field, he created various things around those people. From bloodlines to cultivation techniques, from superpowers to various weapons, everything was recreated exactly as it was. In Infinite Terror, excluding Infinite Dawn and the Primordial Era, the exchanges for the main gods are, frankly, all watered-down versions. They lack the diverse systems offered by different entities, primarily focusing on gene locks and derivatives of the single Infinite Terror system. Therefore, John, after spending some time analyzing them, can perfectly simulate various exchange options, achieving a level of realism comparable to the main gods. Rune technology, cultivation systems, bloodlines, these can be understood from a glimpse, easily deduced through low-level exchanges. After all, he is now very strong, extremely strong. Chapter 194 Emotional Backflow. With his current level of accumulation, there's no reason he couldn't surpass the efforts of an entire race over countless years. As for the materials used to create these things, he could simply provide them himself. At this moment, John had stored tens of trillions of stars, and the energy and mass within his body were increasing without limit. Absorbing a sliver of sunlight would allow him to reap at least 2 trillion times the mass of the same quantity. Perpetual motion? The more he moved, the more he gained. John closed his eyes slightly, and the next moment he entered the fourth-order gene lock mode, then immediately disconnected. A terrifying, multidimensional mental attack stirred within his sea of consciousness in that instant, then spread out through the multidimensional mental network, pouring into the consciousness of the Star River team's humans. Whoosh! In just a moment, as John's spirit flowed back, the entire Star River team's human consciousness was instantly infused with his will. John's mental will was unfathomable. With the growth of his strength, his attributes in all aspects had reached limits that ordinary people wouldn't even dare to imagine. Not to mention, despite how playfully he interacted with Zhao Yingkong and the others, he maintained his bio-force field throughout the entire interaction. If his bio-field were to relax even for a fleeting moment during his launch, not to mention the countless stars stored within his cells, even the liquid gushing from his body would reach near light speed. Then, not only the women before him, but everything in the observable universe would be annihilated by John. While John's mental abilities weren't as extraordinary as his physical body, after comprehending the spirit and soul gems, he was not someone ordinary people could easily manipulate. Even a slight tremor would instantly turn the humans of the Human Federation into incoherent idiots. But at this moment, due to the influx of John's mental power, most people didn't notice this and continued with their own affairs. Only the clone John frowned, sensing the anomaly. So that's it. The original consciousness isn't infused in the present, but in the past, the clone John mused. Let those people cause emotional fluctuations. The so-called emotional point is an anchored time coordinate. Position your emotional pollution at the moment the emotional point is generated, and then dump a certain amount of useless emotions into the past where the emotional point was generated to cancel each other out. Because the flow of emotions is in the past, it won't affect the present. At most, when these people recall the past, because the emotions cancel each other out, their hearts will be completely undisturbed. Fortunately, it's in the past. Otherwise, with such a massive amount of information pollution poured in instantly, the consciousness of the entire Human Federation would be completely twisted, turning them into benevolent fanatics. But what exactly did the main body encounter? Cthulhu? It actually needs hundreds of billions of people to act as emotional garbage cans. The clone John deduced, feeling that things were getting a bit troublesome. According to his memories, wasn't he supposed to be following the normal genetic lock path? Why is he getting involved in this strange thing? Damn it, could it be that the main body copied my memories for the God of God? Not only deleting the sex scenes with Hellish Blizzard and the others, but also hiding other things? The clone was a little annoyed, feeling that a part of him was missing. Should I just go to Earth? John hesitated, preparing to open a portal directly, but then noticed the latest announcement from the federal government. At His Majesty's request, a beauty pageant will begin immediately throughout Earth. All Federation members under the age of 30 are ordered to upload their photos online. After rounds of selection, 10,000 of the most qualified women will be chosen to serve His Majesty. A party? Great. The clone's earlier worries vanished instantly, replaced by a broad smile. Given the original's personality, he generally wouldn't do something like this. It must be that mental pollution. That mental pollution is good. That's how it should be. Why be so bitter and resentful every day? Aren't you happy every single day? I'd better not disturb him for now. I'll meet him after his party. On Earth, John slowly opened his eyes, his gaze gradually clearing as he sensed his emotions. Connecting my spirit with billions of humans from the past is indeed useful. At least it can correct most of my mental distortions. The remaining part can be easily suppressed by a multi-person party. A dozen days later, the entire Earth Federation went completely mad for emotional points. These people went on a massive, frenzied rampage for emotional points, while some who couldn't find anything to do resorted to self-harm and throwing parties. Even worse, Some chose to live stream themselves inhaling heroin to gain massive amounts of emotional points. Of course, this kind of behavior, dancing under John's nose, was directly punished by John with a deduction of 300 emotional points and a month-long ban on redemption options for violating the law. It wasn't just internet celebrities who started this stunt. Some high-ranking officials also abandoned their morals for emotional points. For example, a governor from a certain planet, originally known for his uprightness, appeared in drag on a live stream giving a speech, shocking viewers. Another official even ran naked in the street, live streaming a dramatic display of ecstasy, garnering massive attention. The entire climate of human civilization began to shift because of John's actions. Gaining attention became a source of pride. What was once considered bizarre now seemed perfectly reasonable under the guise of earning reward points. Making money, after all, wasn't shameful. Of course, as the number of pranks increased, many people began to consider their emotions as their own private property, even harboring resentment towards others' pranks, feeling that these pranksters had stolen their emotional moments. Therefore, some cynical individuals began to strictly control their outward emotions, ensuring only their own happiness and absolutely refusing to let others steal their emotional moments. Once again exiting a state of kindness, John absorbed knowledge, speechlessly observing the bizarre landscapes of the entire solar system. If this continues, won't everyone in the universe become insane? John said somewhat wryly. In his mind at this moment, after countless interactions, a vast amount of information had been absorbed, bringing him closer to his envisioned goal. The past is gone, the present is eternal, the future is infinite. John comprehended the countless pieces of knowledge in his mind. Preparing to enter such a state. With my current abilities, although I cannot access the infinite possibilities of the future, if I connect the past and present to form a multidimensional point in time, it's not impossible. Sitting among hundreds of unconscious girls, John's expression was utterly calm, like a sage who had attained enlightenment, lost in his own thoughts. Chapter 195 Green Hat vs. Pranks. John sat cross-legged among the crowd, lost in thought. But the next moment, an inexplicable force enveloped him, disrupting his train of thought. 20 days have passed, so the time for the god's teleportation has arrived, John realized, but he was no longer the same as before. Even without the 6 gems, he could easily handle this special ability. Without moving his body, merely a slight fluctuation of his consciousness shielded everything within the entire galaxy from the god's observation. John looked at the god's wristwatch on his arm. I'm not planning to go back anyway, what's the point of keeping it? With that thought, he easily tore the wristwatch off, crushed it into pieces, and tossed it aside. After doing this, John once again fell into deep, still contemplation, while the other teams anxiously watched the countdown on their arms. The time has clearly arrived. Where's the god's teleportation? Damn it, where's the god's teleportation? On the Zerg homeworld, watching their wristwatches reach zero and remain motionless, the reincarnators of the Southern Flame Continent team were filled with unease. Being in the same universe as John made them feel extremely insecure. Could it be that this is another time rollback like it was 20 days ago, so we're still in the future? One team member speculated. After experiencing such a large-scale time rollback, they too began to have doubts, wondering if everything happening now was just another illusion of the future. It's possible, but the chances are slim. Neo shook his head slightly, taking a big bite of his chocolate. There's too much missing information, and the gap in levels is too great. Under these circumstances, we have no idea what His Majesty wants to do. Neo's frowned. What we do know is that he's conducting a large-scale social experiment with the entire Star River squad. As for why he's doing this, we have no idea. I think even the Supreme God can't interfere much with that Emperor. Now we can only pray that his attention isn't on us, otherwise crushing us will be like crushing ants. We have no chance of winning against such a superhuman force, so thinking too much will only cause trouble and may even lead us astray from his goals. Now we just need to focus on building ourselves up. Manini nodded slightly. So, now that the Supreme God can't go back anyway, we should just settle down here and earn more emotional points to improve ourselves? Neos nodded slightly in agreement, and with his permission, the Southern Flame Continent team's previously closed live stream was reopened, and tens of millions of fans flooded into the live stream room. My fellow Earth Federation members, today I'm taking you deep into the Zerg homeworld to conquer this place and expand our territory for His Majesty the Emperor. Enjoy the show, no need for donations, just send a 666. Richard, in the southern flame continent, flashed a 6 sign at the camera. Behind his lens, a massive swarm of giant Zerg surged, their dense, awe-inspiring numbers. But the next moment, after his team members had secured the camera, he leaped into the Zerg sea below, lightly waving his longsword and shouting, "Fire Dance Whirlwind Sword Technique, 12th form, Golden Light Subduing Demons." Instantly, layers upon layers of golden sword energy surged from his body, carrying a majestic and righteous aura, instantly tearing the Zerg within 100 meters to shreds. The terrifying power stirred envy and jealousy in the eyes of those watching. The next moment, with the emotions of millions surging, another large sum of emotion points was credited to Richard's account. Meanwhile, on a planet severely affected by natural disasters, a clone of Zheng Zha, carrying a shoulder bag, smiled at the camera and said, "Hello everyone, I just spent 1,000,000 emotion points to redeem a one-time space teleportation opportunity. I'm currently on a planet 1,000,000 light-years away from Earth in the Milky Way." The clone pointed to the lava behind him and said, "See the lava behind me? I'm going to perform swallowing lava whole. If you enjoy it, just give it a like. Later, I'll take you to see the different customs and cultures of other star systems, and incidentally help His Majesty conquer those places. Looks like you're doing quite well now." Just as the clone was speaking to the camera, a deep voice sounded from the side. The clone paused, then apologized to the camera, "Sorry everyone, I have some personal matters to attend to. I'll be going offline for a few minutes. Please bear with me." Turning off the camera, the clone looked at Zhang Zha in front of him and said, "Main body, what do you need me for?" "Lolly, she really was raped by Homelander, just as you said." Zhang Zha's eyes flashed with murderous intent, filled with rage. The clone didn't know how to comfort him. From the moment he saw Zhang Zha, he could guess the gist of the matter from the other's mental state. "So what do you want me to do this time?" the clone asked. He knew that the original hadn't come simply to reopen old wounds and tell him this. "Join me in revenge," Zhang Zha said, but was immediately and decisively rejected by the clone. "Sorry, I have my own little girl to raise." The clone waved his hand and said, "I understand your feelings, but I won't go to my death with you. If I go to seek revenge with you, what awaits me might be my little girl being raped. The difference in strength is too great. Your idea has little hope. I won't go to my death with you." The clone Zhang Zha said. "Is this your decision?" Zhang Zha stared at the clone in front of him, clenching his fists and said, "If you're not like me, then die." "You're being a bit too extreme," the clone took a step back and said speechlessly, but was quickly stopped by Zhang Zha. Zhang Zha glared at the clone with eyes blazing like fire. Seeing the clone's blissful expression was more painful than death for him. "Extreme? What do you know? Do you know how envious I am of you? Living such a leisurely life? I wish I were the clone." With that, Zhang Zha stomped the ground, shattering the earth 1,000 meters below him, instantly covering dozens of meters. He threw a punch at the clone, but it was easily caught in the next instant. "How is this possible?" Zhang Zha was incredulous at how easily the clone caught his fist. His body had undergone point enhancement, becoming tens of millions of times stronger. "I don't know how you suddenly became so much stronger," the clone said calmly. "But how can it compare to the amplification from the emotions of billions of humans?" I stirred up. "Don't worry, even though you attacked first, I won't kill you." The clone easily released Zhang Zha's fist, took a step back, and said, "You'd better watch yourself." After saying that, he ignored the stunned Zhang Zha, passed him, and continued his livestream antics. Chapter 196 Infinite John City. On the spaceship, John's clone closed his eyes and carefully sensed the flow. Over the past 20 days, he could feel the main body's emotions constantly being channeled back to the past through emotional anchors. From a few times a day at the beginning, to a dozen times, then dozens of times, until just now, this increasingly frequent emotional backflow suddenly subsided. Confirming that the orb in his mind was no longer sending emotions to the past, the clone breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that problem has been solved. Just as he was secretly speculating, on Earth, John sat motionless cross-legged outdoors. Such periods of quiet contemplation had occurred many times over the past 20 days, but never for so long. But this physical sitting was entirely different. His consciousness was now traversing the timeline with highly active activity. 20 days earlier, on Earth, John, who had been waiting for the human fleet to greet him, slightly opened his eyes. Before him, an elderly man in a suit and tie respectfully said, "Your Majesty the Emperor of the Earth Federation, your loyal subject has come to pay homage." But in the blink of an eye, terrifying energy rays burst forth from John's eyes, instantly obliterating the entire Earth before him. 2 months ago, the otherworldly Emperor, looking at the teleportation array before him, threatened Dr. Strange, "If you don't want to die, wait for me here." But before he could rush into the teleportation array, a giant hand reached out from the boundless universe opposite and gently crushed him to death. 5 months ago, John, who was about to subdue Thanos and Borwas, suddenly snapped his fingers, and the next moment, the entire Milky Way galaxy was wiped out in his hand. As John's consciousness wandered through the past, his past self was injected with his present self's consciousness, and then the present self manipulated the past self to wantonly disrupt time. The wanton disruption of the past caused everything in the present world to change wildly, and the Earth was flickering erratically. The present constantly self-corrected according to the changes in the past, and even in the Earth Federation, the existence of Borwas, the Holy Lord, and others was still constantly switching between the states of death and life. Although he constantly disrupts the present from the past, this is not what he wants to achieve. Because the past is the past, when he returns to it, it becomes the present for him. Furthermore, due to the infinitely multifaceted nature of the Marvel Universe, when he abandons his interference with the past, countless universes similar to those after his disappearance will arise. What John wants to do now is suppress his own existence, preventing the creation of infinitely fragmented universes due to his every decision. The second step is to gradually converge his own timeline, twisting the previously scattered timelines into a single rope and completely integrating them into his body, until the entire Marvel Universe consists only of the concept of John. In the finite past, John's consciousness continuously flows backward, disrupting and correcting this universe. During this time, he also sees countless parallel universes of himself, parallel universes that have been constantly splitting due to his decision since he entered this world. In some universes, because of the Ancient One's intervention, he wasn't hit by Ross's missiles, preventing his behavior from becoming violent, but instead becoming a complete nemesis of wise rulers. In some universes, he was corrupted by strange interdimensional objects, turning him into a ruthless killer. He never established a so-called Earth Federation, instead plunging the entire universe into eternal silence. The infinite parallel universes bring infinite possibilities, and these infinitely many Johns vary in strength. Under his observation, he witnessed exploding cities, exploding stars, structural changes, multiverse. In one space-time, he even saw a John with infinite multiverse power calmly nodding to him, offering a simple greeting. During this observation, he also saw the infinitely many universes before him, arranged in a ring around a central point. At the center of these universes was an infinitely large city. In that instant, a voice automatically arose in John's mind. "This is Infinite John City. Welcome all Johns who find this place." Looking at this city formed from the universe before him, John hesitated, not entering, but instead quietly returning to his past to delve deeper. After countless alterations and corrections to the past, John knew he had succeeded. Without any fancy gestures, the moment he reached that point, it was self-evident. John slowly stood up from the ground. The universe before him had returned to normal, without any unnecessary flickering or clipping. From John's perspective, he gently took a step forward, and in an instant, the entire world split in two. In his perception, he was now stepping forward with his left leg, while a second ago he was still standing in the same spot. Unlike his previous attempts to change the past, this was the state he had been researching and striving to achieve. The past is gone, the present is eternal, and the future is infinite. For ordinary people, their consciousness is forever confined to the present. If time is a line segment running from the past to the present, ordinary people are just a point on this timeline, constantly flowing downstream, unable to stop the relentless current. Those stronger, like John a few weeks ago, were still a point on the timeline, but compared to ordinary people, while they couldn't accelerate forward, they could flow backward, changing the present by returning to the past. And the current John has undergone a fundamental transformation. His position in time shifted from one point to two, himself in the previous second and himself in the next. For ordinary people, the past and present are two distinct points in time, but for John, they are both constant in the present. This is a leap in the level of life. Ordinary people can only observe John from the present, but for John in the present, He can observe others simultaneously from different points in time. From a higher dimensional perspective, John's true form is composed of two Johns. From this moment's perspective, no matter how thoroughly one observes, only a portion of John's body can be seen. The most basic benefit of this is that the instant John's body splits, his strength doubles, his physical mass, the rate of increase in strength, and his mental power all double. But it doesn't stop there. From this moment on the timeline, as time flows, John continuously leaves his mark on the timeline at a rate of 1 point per second. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197 Exponent? Factorial. From a higher dimensional perspective, everything from its appearance to its annihilation is a finite timeline composed of numerous connecting points in time. Depending on the length of the lifespan of things, these timelines vary in length, some stretching infinitely, others less than a second. These timelines of varying lengths, composed of all things, form the ever-flowing river of time. An ordinary person's life accumulates from the past to the present and extends into the future, but what they can truly control is only the present moment. At this moment, on John's ever-extending timeline, two brilliant golden points of light reside, forming a line segment 1 second long. But it doesn't end there. Time continues to flow forward, and in the next second, a new brilliant point of light appears at the end of this timeline. In geometry, 2 points define a line segment. What if a third point of time appears? The next moment, in a higher dimensional perspective, unlike other infinitely long and flowing timelines, John's timeline with 3 points suddenly folds in half. The timeline that should have been moving forward undergoes a massive 120 degrees distortion. An equilateral triangular plane, with sides of 1 second, composed of timelines, was thus bizarrely formed within the river of time, which is composed of straight lines. Then, at the 4th second, with the appearance of the 4th node, John's triangular plane expanded outward, becoming a square with a length of 1 second. After that, pentagons, hexagons. Time continued to surge forward, and with more and more new time nodes merging in, his time plane grew larger and larger. And because John's true form is a collection of every point on this timeline, past accumulations can be carried over to the present. That is to say, at the first node, his overall base strength was 1, the second node replicated everything from the first node, so at the second, his strength increased by +1. After the third node appeared, he could continue to replicate everything from the previous 2 time nodes, increasing his strength by +2. Simultaneously, because the present permeates the past, new time nodes can override his past self, so the power increase from the first 2 nodes changed from +1 to +2, meaning his total strength at the 3 time nodes should be 6. At the 4th node, the newly appearing node inherited everything from the past, and his strength increased by +6 again, but because the present overwrites the past, the total power increase across the 4 nodes should be 24. This wasn't simply exponential growth, but rather factorial growth. It can be simply understood as his strength multiplying by 2 in the second, 3 in the third, 4 in the fourth, and so on. Following this calculation, his strength should be 120 in the 5th second, 720 in the 6th, 5040 in the 7th, 40,000 in the 8th, 360,000 in the 9th, and 3,600,000 in the 10th. While John was still contemplating and carefully sensing the new realm, a minute had easily passed. He could feel his multidimensional attributes continuously increasing, and the speed at which each new node appeared was slightly decreasing. What was a barely perceptible change in time for ordinary people was crystal clear to him. The speed at which new nodes appeared was indeed getting faster and faster. Level growth. John muttered to himself, after all, it's not infinite. Of course, although he said this, John was still quite satisfied. The increase in power wasn't the main point. The most important thing was the leap in life force. At least he wasn't so easy to die now. Now, his true form didn't just exist in the present, but was a combination of each node. Unless each of his past selves at every point in time is destroyed, as long as one remains, he can reappear unscathed from nothingness through node overriding. In other words, for John now, injury is irrelevant. As long as he has a breath left, he is unharmed. But should I really go see that infinite John City? John pondered. his thoughts sweeping across the entire universe. Watching the rise and fall of the Starship team, he had already far exceeded his objective. The next moment, he took a light step and vanished from his spot. On the spaceship, the clone was watching various funny videos from the Interstellar Federation, humming a tune with his legs crossed. The next moment, John's figure slowly emerged from the side. "You're here. The matter is resolved." The clone wasn't surprised, but the moment it turned its head, its eyes bulged out. "Where is your strength?" At this moment, under the clone's observation, John in front of it was as weak as a mortal, the kind of person it could blow away tens of millions of with a single breath. Hey, no way, you've gone mad, haven't you? This doesn't make sense. You're a Kryptonian, what kind of madness could you have? It's not the gene lock, is it? I stored my strength in the past, John smiled. Excessive power was simply too much for this universe to handle, it would explode instantly. So it was stored in a past timeline. Stored in the past? Hearing this absurd explanation, the clone was stunned. That gene lock is so powerful, what level are you at now? Early 5th level? Advanced 5th level? Gene lock? I'm not cultivating anymore, John said. However, the planned objectives have been exceeded, so I'm preparing to leave this universe. What are your plans now? As he spoke, John fed the clone information about his own existence into its brain, letting it digest it. Reading his original self's current level, seeing these increasingly outrageous behaviors, he could only mutter, "As expected of me, I'm awesome." To John's question, he replied rather bluntly, "Thoughts? No, I'm having a great time in the main god space, I'm staying here and not going back." He then smirked, "And even if I said I wanted to go back with you, you wouldn't agree, would you?" "You guessed right, the main universe only needs one John," John said, then vanished from his spot, leaving only a speechless copy. Millions of light years away on an Earth-like planet, Zhang Zha walked silently through the swirling sandstorm. Suddenly, an arm appeared out of nowhere and grabbed him by the back of the neck. After a dizzying spin, as if teleported by the main god, Zhang Zha scrambled to his feet in astonishment, confronted by a horrifying scene. 18 burly men, painted entirely in gold and completely naked, surrounded a man, brutally ravaging him. Oh, another newcomer, and not bad looking at all. He's probably the best behaved of all those sent here, one of the men, who was currently pleasuring Zhang Zha, chuckled, noticing the wary Zhang Zha standing nearby. Chapter 198 The Struggle System. Who are you? Zhang Zha took a step back, looking at the muscular men in front of him with disgust. But then he realized that his once mighty strength had vanished, just like when he first entered the god space, which intensified his panic. "We are, of course, the Shaolin 1857, the burly man laughed. "Since another newcomer has arrived, I'll take some time to spar with you." "You, don't come any closer," Zhang Zha shouted in fear, and with these words, the burly man paused, looking at Zhang Zha with some apprehension. Seeing that the burly man didn't come forward, Zhang Zha breathed a sigh of relief and turned to run away, but found 4 even more lewd-looking burly men standing behind him. "And who are you?" Zhang Zha was on the verge of a breakdown. The leading man, a lewd grin on his face, looked at Zhang Zha and said, You can call us Gay Head 4. He then turned to the 18 men and said, "His Majesty has said this man is to be handed over to us for training." Got it, hurry up and take him away," the 18 men said with a hint of irritation. The 4 men in front of them were terrifying even to them, who were also gay. He. With the 18 men's agreement, the 4 men behind Zhang Zha laughed lewdly. In Zhang Zha's eyes at that moment, the 4 men in front of him were more terrifying than a billion serial killers. Looking at Gay Head 4's outstretched hand, Zhang Zha gasped, "You fucking bastard, you can't do this." Ignoring Zhang Zha's retreat, Gay Head 4 tightly embraced him, then, amidst his struggles, pulled him away. What awaited Zhang Zha was a durian and ultimate humiliation. In his constant struggle, Zhang Zha painfully felt his power disappearing. "Damn it, where's my power? Come back quickly, Super Green Hat System, give me power now." But despite his cries, nothing changed. He could only be pulled deeper and deeper into darkness. Leaving aside Zhang Zha's struggles, before leaving, John dispelled the shield of the galaxy, exposing everything back to the Supreme God's domain. Subsequently, The demons who had lingered there, the reincarnators from Non-Yan continent, Sen continent, and the Central continent team who wanted to stay, were all taken away by the Supreme God. After the Supreme God left, he gently grasped the entire Milky Way galaxy of the Starship Troopers universe and threw him across time into a parallel universe of the Marvel world. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Jason. "Your Majesty?" Jason was overjoyed to see the familiar figure before him. "You've finally returned. I'll probably be away for a while after this," John said. "How is the main universe?" "Over there?" Jason replied. "Earth there has been destroyed once again. One terrifying monster after another has taken over the place. The entire universe is in chaos, filled with terrifying monsters. We dare not go in, for fear of bringing back something bad." "Is that so?" John looked at Jason, whose strength was only at the level of Explosive Street, and with a thought, instantly disintegrated and reassembled Jason's body. When Jason regained consciousness, he felt his strength was extremely powerful, as if he could destroy the entire Milky Way with a single punch. No, not just the Milky Way, but even destroying the universe seemed within his reach. "Your strength is really too weak." "I just boosted your strength a bit," John said casually. "Now your strength is roughly equivalent to mine 10 minutes ago." 10 minutes, is that a long time? Jason looked at John, and from his current perspective, the Emperor seemed unusually fragile. But he knew it was just his imagination. Although he didn't know how John had done it, John's strength had already reached a level he could only dream of. And in his perception, terrifying auras erupted from all corners of the parallel universe, each one no less powerful than himself. In an instant, dozens of people appeared around John. Jason glanced at them and recognized them as John's core subordinates, Shendu, Boros, Thanos, and Hellfire. "Your Majesty, you did this," Boros said, tears streaming down his face as he felt the unimaginable power coursing through his body. This wasn't just joy at his own increased strength, but also the surprise of those around him being just as strong. That meant endless battles. Seemingly sensing Boros's intense fighting spirit, Shendu and the others beside him moved aside in disgust, afraid of being tainted by this power fanatic. "Your strength is barely enough now. From now on, focus on expanding the Earth Federation's territory," John said casually. In truth, with his current strength, he could easily enhance every life form in the entire Earth Federation to Jason's current level. But what would be the point of doing so? It's one thing for these dogs he's somewhat familiar with to help him improve his strength a little, but why should the others reap the benefits without any effort? He's worked himself to the bone to get to where he is today, not for some kind of equality or social harmony. If they want to live well, they should strive hard. Giving them a relatively fair platform is already a favor. The next moment, under the gaze of Hellish Blizzard and the others, John lightly swiped, and a system appeared in the minds of all the civilians of the Earth Federation. Ling. Earth Federation Struggle System version 1.0 has been activated. What is that? All the civilians were stunned by the cold voice in their ears, and then a long introduction to the system flooded their minds. This system was developed by His Majesty of the Earth Federation, aiming for everyone to achieve immortality. As long as you work hard, you can succeed. The harder you work, the stronger you become. The harder you work, the better you live. 8 hours of hard work each day will increase your lifespan by a whole day. 8 hours of hard work every day, and immortality is not a dream. The Earth Federation doesn't support lazy people. Want to be immortal? Just persevere and you can achieve it. Of course, if you don't want to live, just give up. As for the direction of your efforts, work, study, any direction is acceptable. Whether it's socializing, sports, or games, as long as you put in the effort, it counts as effort. This. Sensing the information in his mind, Jason felt that the entire Earth Federation was about to change. Now, all citizens who join the Earth Federation, except for basic food, clothing, and shelter, will have their original basic welfare benefits completely cancelled, John ordered. If you want a better life, fight for it yourself, learn until you die. First of all, it's the end of the month, so I'm asking for monthly votes. Secondly, who spread the rumor that I'm ending this? It's still a long way off, okay? This is just the beginning. The protagonist is only a little strong, so there's not much else to it. Just treat it as an invincible protagonist story. Finally, the readership of this book is so low. Don't you guys follow it? I'm going to be so poor I can't afford to eat. Chapter 199 Rest and Reset. From this day forward, every resident who joins the Earth Federation will have a struggle system. John announced this decision to all residents of the Earth Federation, then his consciousness, residing in a higher dimension, gently rippled. In the surging river of time, which had developed interplane composed of thousands of connected light points, constantly approaching a circle, a time node was gently ripped off. The next moment, before the eyes of Jason, the Holy Lord, and the others, another John sprang forth before them, and this John's aura was terrifyingly powerful, causing them to hold their breath. To His Majesty's, Jason's eyes widened, unsure which was real, but in truth, for John at this moment, neither of these two was him, or perhaps both were him. John's true form was a higher dimensional being formed by connecting countless past and present moments. These two Johns represented only one time node, and each time node was more like an organ to him. Even after being cleaved from the river of time, the speed of this organ's improvement did not stop. As long as it connected with the consciousness signal of the true form, it could be overridden to the same level in the next moment. Under the interference of higher dimensions, the second John that appeared gradually twisted and shrank, then transformed into a dazzling golden sphere of light. I might not be in this universe often anymore, so this will provide energy to the entire Earth Federation in my place, John said softly, holding the sphere in his hand. He then tossed it gently, and the golden sphere vanished, embedded in the fundamental rules of the universe, existing as a basic law of the universe, just like the four fundamental forces. Is there anything else? John asked Jason and the others. If there's nothing else, I might be leaving again for a while. You want to leave again? Hearing John was leaving, Hellish Blizzard couldn't help but grab John's right arm. With John's power contained in the past, his current body couldn't break free. Seeing this, Jason and the others knew it was beyond their control, and they obediently left. Even the dim-witted Boros was pulled away by the Holy Lord with one hand. In the blink of an eye, only Hellish Blizzard and John remained, staring at each other. Everyone else had vanished without a trace. There's always something going on. I said I was leaving last time, and it's been months. John looked at Hellish Blizzard with a resentful expression, a smile spreading across his face. He pulled her close and said, "Sweetie, I'll keep you company when I come back next time. I promise I'll make you happy." "What do you mean, okay?" Hellish Blizzard's face flushed instantly as she felt John's hands roaming back and forth. With her enhanced physique, she could have easily broken free, but her body, thoroughly explored by John, offered little resistance, and she gently collapsed into his arms. "Then I'll stay a little longer." John gently lifted himself up, looking at Blizzard in his arms. Just from the touch, with his young, strong, and energetic body, he was about to take charge of Hellish Blizzard. "This time, let me be on top." Hellish Blizzard looked at the frail John with haughty expression, but the next moment she covered her face, her cheeks burning red. John looked thoughtfully at his slightly damp fingers and said, "Although my strength has increased to an inhuman level, my sensitivity has also increased accordingly. Isn't that even better?" John grinned. As soon as he finished speaking, John, carrying the limp Hellish Blizzard in his arms, teleported away to his apartment, instantly buffing the entire space with countless enhancements. With John's enhancements, even if the two fought inside until the entire city was obliterated, no one outside would know. Due to the different flow of time inside and outside, a day inside the apartment was less than a second outside. 7 seconds later, John slowly emerged from the apartment, snapped his fingers, and restored the altered time flow. The battle shouldn't have taken so long, but it got so intense that he also used his special teleportation ability to bring Zhao Yingkong, Betty, and the others into the apartment. Then came one epic battle after another, and after each battle, those who had fought before recovered and rejoined. In short, the entire battlefield was chaotic. Towards the end, it was impossible to even tell who was being attacked. Now it's time to get down to business. John took a step and disappeared from where he stood. Inside the apartment, on the wrist of Hellish Blizzard, who was slumped on the floor, a light shone on the highest level smart terminal. Gently swiping open the smart terminal, a clear and cute girl's voice came from it. "Blizzard's sister, just now a system popped up in our heads. Is it John coming back?" Hellish Blizzard. The moment she heard the voice, she knew who it was. It was Penny, and Hellish Blizzard really didn't know how to answer the question. Should she say, "That's right, but I was having too much fun with John, so I accidentally forgot about you. Now your John is off gallivanting somewhere." That would be too cruel, wouldn't it? With Hellish Blizzard's silence, The girl on the other end of the smart terminal understood in sighed in disappointment. I understand, Blizzard's sister. Next time John comes back, remember to tell me. Yes, definitely. Hellish Blizzard nodded. Meanwhile, John had already broken through this universe and was heading towards the infinite John City he had glimpsed earlier. His strength was now vastly different from half a day ago, but even then, he couldn't take in the endless universe. However, as a higher dimensional being, he could see much more. In his observation, he discovered that each of the universes surrounding the infinite John City contained a John. Furthermore, countless universes were constantly pouring into this sea of cosmic universes. His consciousness probed one of the newly arrived universes, and it was another universe containing a John. This meant that there was a filtering mechanism around John City, only pulling in universes containing John. They're playing pretty big games, John muttered, then instantly slashed hundreds of his past selves from his higher dimensional body, sending them to lie dormant in various universes. This way, if most of his body were killed in the infinite John City, he could be resurrected without damage through other nodes. Chapter 200 Multifaceted Slang Line. This is Infinite John City. Welcome, Johns who have found this place. The voice echoed in John's mind the moment he saw Infinite John City. This time, however, he didn't hesitate. After leaving himself a backup plan, his body instantly traversed the rifts in the cosmic sea and rushed into the city before him. The moment he entered the city, even though he had anticipated this, he was immediately shocked by the scene before him. What filled John's eyes wasn't a terrifying sight, but simply an infinite number of skyscrapers of various kinds, with countless Johns of different strengths, temperaments, and attire walking on them. Some were righteous and awe-inspiring, some were strangely sinister, some were shy and introverted, and there were even transgender, cross-dressing, and asexual Johns. And the number of people in John City was infinite. Those who could cross the cosmic sea to reach this central infinite John City possessed strength at least to the cosmic structure level, and such people were endless, moving about the city in an orderly fashion. Of course, this wasn't unexpected. After all, that's the Marvel Universe's worldview, infinite nested within infinite, infinite ideas giving birth to infinite worlds, and past, present, and future existing simultaneously. Each universe contains 6 time stones, and whoever possesses one can wield power beyond the single-dimensional realm. He had merely consolidated his future timeline. In the past, countless different timelines had sprung up, or perhaps he himself was a branch of one of John's timelines. Therefore, the existence of an infinite number of universes wasn't too difficult for him to comprehend. But what left him speechless was that every building in the city had a virtual panel on top, constantly flashing images. John was intimately familiar with these images. They were all events from his previous life. There was his dejected expression after a failed confession, his pathetic state after being beaten and cried by older kids, and being dressed up as a lamb and made to dance on stage because of his good looks. Is this fucking insane? John stared at these virtual projections, feeling his dead memories attacking him relentlessly, his toes digging into the ground. How about it? Does it bring back childhood memories? These are precious memories we share. A sentimental voice came from behind John. He turned around and saw himself in a suit. John recognized the suit. It was the same one he wore during his first job interview in his previous life, exactly as he remembered it. How should I address you, City Lord? John? Kent? Or should I just call you by your name from your previous life, Shi Wang? John looked at the man who looked exactly like him. Just call me Shi Wang. I'm just one of the City Lord's infinite clones, here to answer your questions, newcomers. Shi Wang waved his hand slightly. As you can see, I built John City over 100,000 years ago, and the surrounding universe was also carefully selected and brought here by me. After all, this world is so dangerous. If we don't help ourselves, who will? Shi Wang stated. You said 100,000 years ago? John was taken aback. Of course, the past, present, and future coexist, and time has long been a chaotic mess. Compared to you, I am John from the future, while you split off relatively late. I saw your main timeline more than 300 years ago. But your system is a bit bizarre. Shi Wang looked John up and down, easily seeing through the other's body, which was constantly developing into a circle in the river of time. This was quite strange even among Johns. As expected, there are all sorts of oddities among the many Johns. Another new system has been recorded, Shi Wang muttered to himself. However, Your system, though bizarre and strangely pieced together, is, in my evaluation, within the top 300 of every John I've met. Shi Wang explained, nodding as he spoke. Although your current strength is only hovering around the cosmic structure level, if I gave you the chance, you could make a triple leap the instant you reach the single element level, at least reaching the infinite multiverse level. Having finished his research, he looked at John and recommended, how about I give you a push and pull you directly to the infinite multiverse? Then you'd be considered one of the top players here. No need, John waved his hand in refusal. He hadn't figured out his next step yet, and forcing him now wouldn't do him any good later. Shi Wang didn't suggest it again. He had asked almost every John who came here, but they had all refused. Okay, but since you're here, there are some things you need to know, such as the multiverse slashing threshold, Shi Wang said. The multidimensional slaughter line? That's right. If we, as visitors from another world, had reached the multidimensional level before entering, we'd be captured by OAA immediately. I've seen many unlucky souls stronger than me get taken away. Then how come you're alright? John asked. Although he wasn't entirely sure of the other side's strength, the vast cosmic sea outside alone proved that their strength was definitely at the multidimensional level. Because I only became a multidimensional after entering Marvel, so I'm practically a native. OAA naturally wouldn't bother me. Shi Wang smiled slightly. Of course, there are other ways to avoid a slaughter line, but to achieve that, your strength must be at least at the infinity box level. And keep this safe. Shi Wang waved his hand lightly, and a corpse hidden in subspace was thrown directly to John. What is this? Spider-Man? John stared blankly at the millions of corpses piled up in this subspace, all of them Spider-Man's otherworldly variants. Otherwise what? What do you think we set up John City for? Just to protect you little Johns from getting killed? Shi Wang sighed. Those Spider-Men you killed in the parallel universe, you stirred up a spider's nest. If we hadn't intervened, you wouldn't have been able to develop so smoothly. Intervene to quell it? John looked at the millions of Spider-Man corpses in the alternate dimension before him. How do you know all this? You've been watching me for a while. What are you thinking? Surveillance? I don't have time for that. It's because of our alternate dimensional John rescue device. Whenever it detects a John dying in the timeline, it searches for the cause through similar parallel universes and then sends people to solve the problem. Now, as a price, you have to repay 10 times for every help you receive. Shi Wang threw a cube at John. Finish this first. What's going on? I just wrote a little bit of erotic stuff, and the intelligent review system cut over 300 words from my previous chapter, and what kind of garbage did they change it to? End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.